All right. Hello and welcome to the Crackdown episode 13. Today we have LS, the famous Sinners and Saints guy. So that's why we had the title song right there. This is going to be a show that's going to be kind of jumping all over the place from NA to EU. You're actually our first non-pro player guest. So this will be kind of like encompassing all the regions. We'll talk about Coaster. We'll talk about everything.
I mean, it was pro for like 5 seconds in StarCraft 2, but, you know, enough about Artos' fucking stories.
All right, we try to forget about those stuff. The only thing we got out of that time in LS's life was that fucking LS OK fucking picture. That's about it. Like, that is the only thing of merit that came out of that whole situation.
Let's be real. That picture of him with that mullet is fucking amazing, by the way. That's why that sentence is in the songs. Imagine him with that haircut, like, well, I'm and you drafted at least with no pressure on the top. Like, you could be in a country band, LS. You could do that. It's a lot of whining, I've noticed. But being entertaining while doing it.
Yeah. I mean, so Ellis and I actually we did a little mock draft, you know, the other day. Should be premiering today, and you know, after I you know, I gave him the free draft by just drafting Aatrox 1-2. So after doing that, Ellis agreed to fucking come on my show. So, you know, here he is, man.
You have to realize, to LS, the entire sport of League of Legends should just be a mock draft, because after you've done the draft correctly, why even bother playing the games out, right? If they play the games out correctly, LS, then the draft wins. So, you know. It's just like it's a waste of everyone's time.
I'm sure that everyone is going to be completely lost on the mock draft, because there's a point where, you know, Ellis just goes into, he's like, all right, so it's like we got Jeskai Fires here, like first like a red-white comment. I'm like, all right, man, like can we just end the fucking segment? Like, this shit is just over at this point. So.
It was like, you know, when Master Roshi was training up Goku, like, I don't remember that specifically.
That would have been more my speed than the Jeskai Fires, let me tell you. So
you got the reference? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Fucking good. Yeah, so how you doing? Are you ready for these finals, the second, third place match, all that stuff?
So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to the co-streams. I just finished a day of LCK like an hour and a half ago, or less than that, maybe.
Holy moly.
So I've been going. This is my schedule, and then I have to sleep and wake up and do LCK. So
nice.
Nice. As soon as this ends, I gotta sleep and immediately wake up in like 8 hours and then LCK again.
Yeah, well, I guess my advantage here is because you probably won't be co-streaming the LCS tailgate because you have too much shit to do. Yeah. Like, I'm just going to be able to defend myself, and I can say whatever random bullshit I want, and you're just not there at all. So, you know.
The thing is, though, you know, like, as a serious and a jokey point, like, you guys actually should be simultaneously loving and hating the new formats that we're using in LCS and LCS, where it's basically double a limb. I mean, I know the LEC one is the one that's like, it's like slightly adjusted double a limb. Because in theory, the reason why double a limb is good in other games, like, the reason I actually introduced it myself to a CSGO tournament I'm working on now is because from Dota, another game that involves drafting like League, that's actually the key element of double limb that's cool, is if you meet someone a second time, is like, how do you adjust based on what you did the first time? Like, what did you test that didn't work? But that's also what will tilt you, because that in theory sounds awesome. Then it's like a chess game between two people. But it's just going to tilt you more when people make even more ridiculous draft errors the second time, which shows that they can't play certain stuff, or they just don't think a certain champion's good.
Yeah, I personally think it'll be a lot closer into you, because, I mean, like the Mad Lions G2 series, that obviously came down to like the last moment, the Satchel on the Nexus, etc. And you can really realistically see a world where G2 could beat Mad Lions, and like, obviously I don't think they'll be the favorites versus Fnatic, but there's a world where they can actually beat Fnatic too. Whereas in NA, I mean, EG has really good record against FlyQuest. They're 5-1 in terms of games this split. And then EG kind of got smacked by C9. Even though it was a 3-1, it was pretty much like a brutal 3-1 for all intents and purposes. So for me, it's like, okay, maybe we won't get that Jizuke Yasuo game out of EG. So maybe they have like another opportunity to throw something different. But I just don't really see a world where in NA, like, C9 loses. Like, I just
That's because everyone had their hopes pinned on TSM.
Yep.
And even TSM doesn't believe in themselves half the time, mate.
Yeah, people were flaming me for that. I mean, there was a huge... I don't know if you guys followed, but there was like a huge thing about caster bias, right? With like Medic recently.
Because we haven't had that discussion. That fucking like that's like just jumping. That's like an NP. Right? Imagine this, LS. That's like the fan is like a fucking hamster. He's like, right, I'm just gonna jump in my wheel for a while. Everyone is biased. Like fucking, we've done this a million times, guys. Like it's the same discussion. It doesn't go anywhere. At the end, we all just go, yes, humans who have opinions are biased. The end.
Wait, what happened with Medic?
He had okay. So I guess it pretty much goes like this. He's
basically the equivalent of the TSM Jat situation. They just claim he was like biased toward the teams that he was casting.
There was like a very specific moment where it started from. So he was casting the Origin versus G2 series for where Origin lost and got fourth. And in I think the last game, I think it was in game 4. Destiny was playing Nautilus and they got Baron and they were like looking poised to win the game. And he flashed the FPX emote. Like the FPX, like whatever, Worlds emote, and obviously FPX beat G2-3 in the finals, etc. And Medic was like,
thanks to move, by the way.
Yeah, so Medic got super upset by this, and he's like, you're not good enough to use that emote. Like he like said that like about the player like on broadcast, and everyone's like how like obviously it's supposed to be banter, you know, like.
Yeah.
Like it's not like Destiny is like sitting there like like we're FPX and you're G2.
No,
like we're better than you. Like he's a fucking OC player, man. Like he's just happy that he's out of the fucking mud these days, and he's actually like playing in a fucking real league for once. And Medic got super upset by that, and it was just clear that he was pretty fucking like biased towards G2 just in terms of his casting. He was casting everything from like the G2 standpoint. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's like the main drama.
Should we address this topic a little bit, though?
I would like to. I mean,
LS, I've got one thing I want to say on this topic, right? Sure. Which is, listen, LS can talk literally from being in the game as a commentator like Medic, but I can say it as an analyst, as someone who's done, like, I might have done like 60 CSGO lands in my life. And I can tell you, part of the methodology of how you actually analyze the game, this is why predictions are both worthless, but also actually valuable. They're worthless in the sense that since you're going off things that happened in the past, trying to guess what will happen in the future, nobody can be even, I'd say, like 80% accurate. I don't think it's possible no matter who you are. But the reason why it's worth doing is because it also adds anchor points to how you're going to analyze and talk about the game. So if I say the reason why G2 is going to beat Origin is because, you know, they're going to be more proactive in the mid game and then they're going to draft heavily for tops. I'm just making shit up here, you know, and then they're going to also like focus more on objective control. Now, if they don't do any of that and I'm wrong, I don't just abandon it. That's how I will then talk about it in the post game. Like they didn't do the Baron control like I thought they would actually. Origin was able to push them more in that sense. And where were the drafts for the heavy tops? So like in that scenario, right, you might be able to say, what, are you just a fan of G2? Do you not even care about Origin? It's like, no, that's actually how I'm making it so that, because like the reason we do these talk shows is you can talk for hours about one game and about one draft. So to be able to get anything meaningful, to give you my perspective, I have to sort of tell you, right, I'm coming in thinking this way. Here's what happened in the game that adjusted that. And then the final result is, here's some analysis that then was based on the game, but also tied to what I said. So unfortunately, you essentially have to come into the game almost thinking like, right, I'm going to sort of mainly follow these aspects of the story. And sometimes that means that the underdog is the one that gets missed out in that equation because they haven't necessarily shown what they deserve to be featured in that story. You think it's going to be all about the favorite. So I can certainly see how that can happen. I think actually people, when they critique like that, they're being quite unrealistic because they're acting like they would just sit as some like fucking neutral alien observer who has no connections or emotion toward any of the players and just constantly be analyzing everything. I don't think it's possible. Like I would always say this, who are they contrasting us against? Who's the guy who's unbiased? Tell me the unbiased caster and I'll go show you 50 examples of him saying things that by everyone's metric would be biased. I think everyone's biased.
Of course. You have any opinions on this as a caster, LS? Do you feel like you're personally biased towards certain teams in Korea?
I think so. All right. So I agree with Thorin that people do have biases because I clearly do in my own casting. And like there are certain biases that I like joke about that people always accuse me of in regards to like Chovy or something. Like now that's where we're sort of making it like into a meme on LCK where I vote for Chovy like MVP even when he's not in the game. And like stuff like that's going on, right? But
this way, every caster or analyst I know is biased towards and against certain styles of play. Even
yes,
I was going to mention this too.
Right. So this is like a part of the sinners and saints that like surrounds me right now. So generally, I tend to gravitate towards saints or saint compositions, and I'm keeping track of like the post draft prediction sheet. So I have. LCK, I think there's 199 games right now, and I'm at 79 point something %.
That's actually insane.
And then my world sheet, 99 games, I was at 78 point. It was like I think I have it. I don't know if I have it like on standby, but it's like 78.9 or something, and that was through worlds, like group stages, and I had stuff like Dom1 losing to the wildcard team and other stuff. So I'm tracking those. because I realized like there's pre and post draft prediction, but the post draft is something that really interests me because I'm watching all the regions and I don't give a fuck who's playing. I want to see what the champions are supposed to do, and then if that ends up coming to fruition. And so that's why I'm trying to track the post-draft prediction rate. Now, if I try to do this in NA,
it's super hard, actually. Like my post-draft in NA, my prediction is just pretty much the same as like my pre-draft. Yeah, I do, and it's not super high. Okay. It's like 65% maybe. Whereas it's pretty much the same as my original prediction, but when I was doing Worlds, it was much higher. It was in the 70s somewhere. So
yeah.
I think that
the implication in terms of what he's saying though is like it's what you'd all expect, right? I'm assuming Koreans just play the comps out like kind of by the numbers as to how you'd expect it. That's why you can have a higher prediction rate.
Yeah, they play a lot safer. They play a lot safer. I mean, LCK is literally can't kill. Every fucking team, their acronym means something that just is synonymous with fucking passive play and going to sleep. So you have T1, which is timeout 1. You got fucking Sandbox, which is step back. You got Dom1, don't want to go. I mean, you can just keep going.
Perfect.
So you get to basically get to see all phases of the drafts, and even the Sinner drafts that come out in the LCK. They will sometimes try to do stuff early, and then it just doesn't work because people are playing overly safe.
Well, they go a bunch of weird shit. Like one day I was watching a game.
They do some weird stuff too, yeah.
Where they were playing Olaf, right? And you're like, okay, Olaf, like the classic Sinner champion, right? LS fucking hates this champion, bro. He just hates this champion. I've talked to him about this champion for years. We have different opinions on Olaf. But like,
Dom, I kind of hate it too. I would have guessed for similar reasons, which is the amount of times I see someone pick it, and then they don't do anything in the early game. Like that just makes me feel like the game was a waste of time.
Exactly, but there's also the other side of it where there's like the perfect time for it for like when FlyQuest played against TSM Game 5, they brought out the Olaf into Sejuani, and they just snowballed the whole game based off like the power difference in the jungle between the two champions, right? So like I see some of these drafts in LCK, and I shit you not, I forget which game it is. You probably remember the game. This Olaf went fucking Cinderhulk Warmogs on Olaf. It's like, what is the point of
that's common.
Yeah, that's shit. That is shit. That is not how you play the champion. Like, that's like, all right, I'm going Elise with the Cinderhulk. It's like, what? But like, that's the opposite of what the whole champion functions as.
They still rush fucking Morello here, second item. They do a bunch of fucking shit here that. And I've talked about this on my stream recently. It's because Korea, there's no social media, right? So like we have Twitter. So when we see dumb shit, we can go out and make a tweet. And pro players, right? Or pro players will actually interact with us, right? Or there's Reddit, which is really active. Korea doesn't have that. No one pays attention to Inven, but also there's no
like the pro players don't read Inven.
There's no such thing as like EDU content creators in Korea.
Right. Okay.
Or, I mean, there's EDU content creators the same way that Night Blue makes educational videos.
Okay.
So,
what?
I mean,
like, okay, man. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Night Blue's taking shots. He's not even here. What the fuck?
Jesus Christ.
Okay, continue.
So, like, I mean, that's basically what the educational content is in Korea. It's like some high or like highish MMR player making like pub stompy videos saying like, this is what you do. Actual coaching content, actual like draft reviews doesn't really exist in Korean. And if it does exist in Korean, it's very passive. Like there's not a lot of flame.
Don't blame them too much.
Like, yeah, because of the cultural differences. So because of this stuff doesn't exist, and then the only social media outlet that pros use, like that interact with their fans and like talk with each other, is Facebook. So it's a fucking echo chamber. So you can't say anything because there's no anonymity, and then you'll just get fucking doxxed, I guess, if you say something like too bad. So I've talked about this on my stream. So you have a ton of stuff that is just ass backwards. Like for instance, like Leandri's is almost never seen in Korea. As an item, right? Even in spots where it's good, it's just never seen. You'll have all the sets build Black Cleaver when Triforce is better, right? And in the majority of cases, right? Like you can go over that ad nauseum and basically say like this doesn't make any sense. So there's like itemization things, and then there's other stuff that happens like in the drafts with the way that they itemize the champions, like you're talking about, like Warmog's Tank Olaf. Or something, stuff like that happens all too common, and it's really bizarre. I mean, there's other things that are happening in Korea. Like Lee Sin is on a 12-game loss streak, and he has like 30% or less win rate in Korea. And he got picked he got picked recently tonight. Korea's just really strange. as a region, and then they're the slowest to adapt to things. They're I don't know how to describe it, man. But also, like, middle of the pack here is like 4th through 10th, so it's a mess. It's really strange in Korea right now.
So how does that play into like your caster bias? Is it just like kind of like, oh well, the top 3 teams, you'll just kind of like respect them more in terms of like what type of drafts they do? Or
interestingly enough, so my draft predictions. So I have 42 incorrect, right? And I think 26 of these is actually by T1 in Africa, or maybe more than that. It might actually be 30. So which is an obscene percentage. The fact that like one team or like 2 teams mostly, because they played against each other, has hit my draft score so hard, right? So it actually, I think it helps me a lot because I go into it like any team can fucking beat anyone, right? So I'm really just looking at the draft. And obviously, like Thorin mentioned, I do have bias towards the scaling team compositions, or what team compositions I think are more likely to just go the distance and come online. I do include like my Google Doc that's whatever. There's like a color blue that basically says like, okay, I think that the enemy team won the draft, but I don't think it's meaningful enough, and I think that this team's going to win anyway. Yep. And sometimes I will do that for like the teams that have.
That's literally players. Every draft in NA. I've given up on actually doing it based off what draft I think is better, because some of these teams are so incompetent that even when I get the better drafts, I'm just like, yeah, C9's just going to win. Like, I think I predicted C9 after the first game to win every single game. Like, just based on like the skill difference between them and the other team, I didn't even care about like draft disparity or anything like that. Yep. I mean, I think that in NA, the whole idea of like everything's a blue circle, dude. There are no black circles in NA drafting. But I've noticed it in myself. Like, I think I'm very biased towards teams that like have proactive playstyles. Like, I've just always been a huge proponent of that. So teams like TSM, I'll generally want them to succeed because I feel like that type of style, like theoretically, I think the hardest part of the game to play out should be like early game. If you can consistently get early game leads, I think it should be easier to like play mid and late game with leads than from behind. But for some reason, like TSM just seems to over engage and lose like every single game in the mid game. So it just,
that was one of the.
By the way, you notice the way you're even describing it explains why bias is not only always going to exist, but is necessary. Because in order to make any qualitative judgment, as in to decide what is better, you have to yourself have a set frame of reference. It cannot just be in flux at all times. Otherwise, you'd sound like an idiot. Like if before the game you were like, well, the team with the better scaling is going to win. Then afterwards you were like, well, of course the scaling was a mistake in that game because they lost it. So like that would be dog shit. The whole thing is you have to basically already have, like what Dom was basically describing there was the way he then looks at the end output of the game and the result is based on what he thinks is correct about League of Legends, which is obviously inherently from Dom. Like he didn't have anyone tell him what was correct about League of Legends. He came to those conclusions himself by playing the game, by watching the game, by talking to people. So as a result, like that's why I always say the way you spin it back when someone says you're biased is you go, well, who's the best caster or analyst who isn't biased? Like I've given this example many times before. Think of the great sports casters and analysts. So like John Madden, probably the most legendary NFL commentator of all time. I always joke, like you would have thought Brett Favre was his fucking bastard son. Like this guy fucking loved this guy. Like if he was throwing an interception, it wasn't a problem because it was Brett Favre. Like, you know, he was going for the play or whatever. If his shit
what
quarterback does
he intended to.
Yeah, exactly. That's the joke. If the shit quarterback does it, they don't get any credit for that, do they? Same with that legendary guy from hockey, Don Cherry. Mate, he used to fucking, like that Martin St. Louis, he would probably just let him marry his daughter. He's fucking, he's ridiculous. But that's the whole point. I totally get it. It's the same with me, like Froggen or any of these. We all have our players who are biased in favour. We all have players who are biased against, by the way. And you notice it's even funny because when we're biased against the player, we even know ourselves. Like they have to do sort of like 1.5 times more before they get any of the credit, don't they? Whereas like I would actually, I've done it before. I've given credit. Well, one time, like Flame lost a game, but he was doing like an attempted split push that didn't work, and I was like, "Yeah, but that's not his fault." Like, look what a genius! He was trying to draw the enemy away. It's like I was just going fucking deep in the rabbit hole, you know. I know it was ridiculous, but also I even think that's entertaining if you do it right.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I completely agree with that sentiment. I think the reason why Medic was getting so much flack is because he kind of doubled down on the idea that he wasn't biased. So like when he was,
why would you do that?
Yeah, exactly. He should have just been like, like
mistake that you
I'm biased towards G2. Like I don't know how you could be a fan of Europe and watch Europe for this long and not like G2. Like, how do you not inherently like this team? This is such a fun, fucking unique team with great personality, and like they're smart as fuck in terms of like the way that they play out the map. Like in mid game, etc. Of course, you're gonna like that team. Like they're the most like you're gonna be biased towards winning number one if you don't have a stake in it.
They carried the region for the last year and a half or whatever, haven't they?
And then once you get to these international tournaments, the whole like the whole idea of your region is based off like how good G2 does. Like you're just rooting for G2 to win worlds so that your region looks good. So I think the problem that people had was then when he went back in like the Reddit thread and was like, no, I'm not biased. It's just that like whenever a team is like, you know, topping a region, casters are just going to be called biased towards them, which to me, like, I don't really necessarily agree with that part of it because like the teams that I think I was biased towards this split were C9 and TSM, right? Like I wanted a C9 TSM finals. Not only did I think that would be the best in terms of like viewership, hype, like, cause I care about like the hype of the esport now because I'm semi-involved in it, etc. So I thought that would be best for viewership and hype. And I also just thought that, you know, TSM was the only game up until this EG last series. TSM was the only game to take a game off of, or the only team to take a game off of C9 because their playstyle, at least they can get early leads where most teams versus C9, they just get shit on for the first 15 minutes hard that they can never come back. So like I thought that was probably the best shot that we had for a competitive like 5-game hype final. So I think that's like kind of what people had a problem with the Medic example is like he wasn't willing to admit his bias even though there is clear bias there.
There's a couple of things to throw in here. One, first of all, that, by the way, Destiny, you even triggered the fucking guy casting the game, bro. That's even better. Like, you're a legend. I think you're a dog shit player. I think you should fuck back off down into that prison that we made.
Oh, God. God damn, Thorin, what the fuck?
What are you gonna do, bro? I'm not going to Australia, bitch. I don't give a fuck. Put some garbage. You have to go like 29 hours on a placement.
Hey, yeah, no, I've done that before. Let me tell you, it's hard to come out of OCE. That region, like, you like feel bad. No, you feel bad for NA players in the NA region. You're like, damn, they're just they're like so hamstrung.
Batman getting out that pit in Dark Knight.
Yeah, no, like, okay, so think about this. When I was retired, I played on stream 0 delay in OCE, and in 1.5 months, I had 2 accounts in the top 20. And like, I considered myself like a mid to low challenger, like player at that point in NA. Like I wasn't like topping the NA ladders, like shitting on everyone. I was a mid to low challenger NA player consistently. I went to OCE, 2 accounts of the top 20 without trying, no delay, all on stream. Like it was really fucking
you were
bad.
Down there fucking
yes, season 7.
Bumping boots and all that.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah, I see you.
I was making moves. I was making moves out there, but
I appreciate it. So.
You know,
the other thing to say was, that's the mistake he made was going with the angle that like he's not biased. But I would also say this as well. There is a line to it, in my opinion. Like, here's the thing. If we're on a talk show, I can say Reckless is not a good player forever if I want. Like, I can be the most biased. But I would say this, and anyone who's seen me in CSGO can corroborate this. If I actually am working the event, though, and I'm doing the post-game, and it's a player that I'm biased against, if they do win the game, and they do beat the players I like, and they do beat the style I like, I will actually, like, sort of make myself be more fair than I actually would be in my own opinions. As in, I'd give them more praise than I would. But that's because also in that setting, you're not just representing your own opinions, you're also working as an analyst on the desk. Like, someone has to give the props to the players. So I always think just in that sense, you should be your most fair when you're on camera in that regard. So, like, I get what Medic, he was probably meaning something like that. Like, he wouldn't be unfair to a player or he wouldn't be hating on them just because they're not G2. But, like, I think there is a line on that one. It's different what you do personally as opposed to professionally, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
Speaking of which, Tom, this could actually transition into a straight fire segment because remember when Mark Z attempted to go ham on fucking LS here and did sort of the same guy who made a show called like The Blame Game, then was made one video like, here's why everything's this guy's fault. All this shit starts playing all the video like, but I will say though, LS, here's the problem, right, mate? You actually did veer into like Forgiven type territory there, where I always used to say to people like Forgiven, listen, if you just keep it in the game and it's just about the fact that you disagree with your teammates, so that you're very harsh on them, I can defend that. But when you say ridiculous shit, I can't always defend that. Like, if you tell the player to kill himself, I can't defend that. Like, there's certain things I can't defend. So the problem is, LS, that clip he played where you are just going on fucking grabs, like, you don't know anything. Your players just don't know everything. You're just standing behind him with a bottle of water, giving him, like, it's hard to defend that. Like, you weren't going ham on that. Like, I know some of it might have been hyperbole for streaming to be fun and that, but what would you say on this whole angle?
I was tilted by stream. Dom must like get this. So basically,
no, I've never been tilted by my stream before. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never been frustrated by anything my chat has said.
I don't know how long awake I was, but it was on like one of those co-stream weekends where I was still doing the LCK weeks, and I was like, I was running the gauntlet basically. Like I was doing the LCK casts full time, and then I was coming back, I was streaming, and then I would do LEC live view into LCS, into sleep a little bit, and then go back into LCK, right? And my chat just blows up, right? And I have no idea what the hell was going on. So then when it comes to like casting on the LCK, I try to not bring in like anything. I don't know how to describe it. Like I try to remove my like on-stream persona as much as I can. Like I've made some jokes, I think, in recent weeks since like Atlas and others have started to integrate it with like Twitch Prime and whatever jokes like that, and like co-stream stuff.
It's such an unfortunate joke to make. It's like, sub to my Twitch with Twitch Prime. Just kidding, gotcha. Like, what the fuck, man?
I don't like to go too far when I'm on LCK. Like, PS, subscribe to LS. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So basically, it just got linked to me, and I had no idea what the chat was doing. Or I think I got donated to me, and I was just like, I was tilted out of my mind already by the Twitch chat, and then I'm watching it, and I got really tilted. So I felt bad after, right? Because I deleted the VOD, and I thought I deleted everything immediately afterwards. I talked to Grabs once it was made like, or I tweeted at him, and he replied back to me. Once it was made like a scene of. And the weirdest thing was before that Mark Z video went out, I had already talked with Riot twice about I just thought like, okay, like, yeah, I fucked up, like reacting in that manner. And I haven't like done this in like, I don't even know how long. And we just sort of talked about it. And then I saw it in the video and I'm like, what is this doing here? But the weirdest thing was, at least for me, was that it was a video that was about Morello versus Leandri, right? And then the last couple of minutes is just about me.
Basically.
After the buildup was like, we shouldn't flame each other, guys. We shouldn't target people. Look.
Then he's like, and this fucking Leandri salesman over here, man, this guy is fucking scamming all you motherfuckers, so fuck him. Like,
that actually ties into what I was saying before. Here's what I got mad about with that. Like, listen, I'm not going to defend what LS did there. Like, I can't decide whether or not it's questionable. I would want to put a judgment on it. I have my own personal opinion, but I don't think there's an objective stance on that. What I'll say is this. Where I thought that was dirty was where Mark Z tried to emphasize, by the way, this guy is an LCK commentator. He wasn't on LCK, you fuck. You behave differently when you're on the broadcast from when you're in your personal job. By his logic, right, that distinction I pointed out before that we all do, including Mark C, by the way, he definitely does not give all his opinions the same way when he's on fucking LCS as he would on a talk show or in person.
Hell
privately.
no.
So the idea that, like, he's allowed to have that double standard, because we all do, by the way, it's called being professional. Being professional is when you do your job. When you're at home on your stream, you're a different personality.
Of course. Look at the show right now. Like, me and LS.
I thought to try and imply that, like, he was trying to imply basically LCK should fire LS because he'd said this stuff. It's like, he's not on the LCK broadcast. The fuck is this?
No, I mean, like, you'll be able to see it today. I mean, LS and I do a draft. You know, like, when I'm doing this show with LS, we're dropping F-bombs all over the fucking place, like, just talking freely, you know? Like, that's the point of the show. I mean, obviously there's lines, like, that you don't want to fucking cross, but the line is way, way, way more pushed towards, like, saying curse words, etc., than when you're on the right broadcast.
If we were on the fucking LCS broadcast now, I probably wouldn't have said that Destiny can fuck off back to that prison that Britain made for this people.
Exactly.
Hundreds of years. You know, I'm going to go ahead and say I probably wouldn't even have thought of that to say it at the time.
Yeah.
No, the thing about his video, I mean, there were positive takeaways from his video because I agreed. I didn't try to defend that clip by any means. because I think that it was really tasteless, and I expressed it as such. I mean, if I didn't think it was tasteless, I would just leave up the VOD and everything, like all my other VODs and clips and whatever, right? Because I try to live in a glass house, because people tend to lie and exaggerate on the fucking internet. I mean, both of you guys know about that. Fucking, they'll say people. So a defense against that is to A, always be connected. So I'm fucking always online, basically. And then B, leave up everything like that you possibly can. Don't delete everything. And that's it's a sad thing. But I felt bad about that, and I removed it. And I mean, I downloaded the VOD. I had it on my desktop, and I actually played it on stream when the video came out. And I was like, there's more context here that was not included in the video. And that sucks. I think Mark Z's video, I think the intention was there. I felt personally attacked. Because it struck me as weird. I didn't like the fact that like my face is the thumbnail.
Here's the irony, KLS, is that I agree. The actual intention of the video, I kind of fuck with. Like, I like the idea of trying to tell people, don't be too harsh in your judgment. Like, let's all have different opinions. We can see it. But the problem is, this is the joke. This is the irony. Obviously, Mark Z is mildly biased against LS. He doesn't like the way LS does things. So at the end, he just chose LS as the main example. And even though this isn't what the whole video was, the nature of the internet is the video became, is LS a cunt, basically. It wasn't actually about the Leandris versus Morello thing by the end anyway. It was even about what does LS think about that, not about the actual topic at hand. So that just shows, actually, it was just unfortunate because it shows you can't avoid bias no matter who you are.
Yeah. No, yeah. And I at the end of it, I wanted to, like, I did my, like, I watched it on stream. I reviewed it, whatever, but I didn't want it to go any further. I didn't want to turn it into like a war. I didn't want to go into Twitter battle or Reddit battle that's just fucking pointless, man.
Really?
It's so stupid. Yeah,
I love that shit.
Really do.
I thrive in the fucking mess.
I'm tired of it.
Let me just tell you who you're replying to right now. I actually saw a thread the other day that I actually loved. Because, like, in the modern day, I'm like you, Ellis. Like, I actually literally don't read Twitter replies. And I try to stay away from all that shit because I just find it, like, toxic. But I actually saw the other day Dom do a tweet where he just said, like, what was the topic about? What was the really reasonable thing? Oh, it was where you said, why did they give out the API to betting companies? Because obviously then when there's a delay, people just come in the chat and spoil who won the game.
Yeah.
Right? Even though that's obviously a totally reasonable take, right? Because obviously everyone in it was just like, right, whatever Dom says, I must think the opposite. There was just a million people in his replies, like, so just fucking turn the website off, bro. Like, just like weird, like
it's like, yeah, bro, I'm going to the fucking website. Like, I was
replying to every person individually with like a customized insult. Just for them.
Exactly. I love that shit.
Like, get off the internet.
I'm like, you need to feel bad for being so fucking stupid. Like, somebody has to make you feel bad. Clearly, your parents didn't alert you of you being so stupid. And honestly, I believe that I'm doing a public service at this point because if I don't tell them they're stupid, they're gonna go through their whole fucking life not knowing that they're fucking stupid, and they won't be able to like shape themselves. It's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do anything that requires thinking. Maybe I shouldn't be an analyst. I should be like a fucking like sanitation worker or something. Like let's just do something different with your mindset instead of like trying to be like a hardcore League of Legends Twitter analyst. Like any type of job outside of that is better, bro. Please just don't type to me.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. So, like,
and by the way, the other thing that LS
it's
said
for
as
humanity,
well, which we can all absolutely relate to, I'm sure, is when you are also in like a state where you're tired or like you like just fucking you need a coffee or you haven't had any food or you've been working long hours, you're going to be 10 times more triggered when someone hits that right point. What do people think like 80% of those listen local fucking spirals are? They're not like, I'm not sat there like perfect mental health, like, been having a brilliant day today. Hey, local, what do you think about the game? No, like I'm super tired. It's like 2 a.m. and this fucking idiot's going like, but Thorin, Bjergsen can never do wrong. And I'm like, right, fucking unleash all the evil, summon the demon. He must be destroyed. Like, of course, in that moment you just go off, don't you? The worst part of you comes out.
Yeah, no, I think the thing that I've learned about Thorin is it's not really if you have differing opinions that piss off Thorin. It's that if your basis for having the opinion is like stupid, then Thorin is just fucking pissed.
I can't handle it. Yeah. That's the thing. People don't get that, Dom, because everyone always says that I can't handle people having different opinions to me. I don't think me and LS agree on like fucking 80% of things in the game. We like totally different players, styles, come from completely different background. But I never argue with him because we're never doing that basis. Like if I keep asking him what the reason is, he's going to give me a reason. Like he's got a philosophy behind it. But yeah, it's if basically even if the person agreed with me, but the reason's stupid, it does tilt me. That just triggers me for some reason.
Yeah,
and it's not. It's just a personal thing of my own, by the way. Like. I should be able to just let it go, but I can't. Because I also do kind of think in line with what you were saying, though, Dom. I kind of feel like that about talk shows. Like, I hate people who are just on talk shows and they give some filler opinion, and then when you ask why, there's nothing to it. It's like, well, shut the fuck up then. Like, have some basis to what you're saying. Think it through. Have a good reason. Give us an argument for it. Let's have some fun.
I've never been so I've never seen Thorin so tilted as when I was in Summoning Insight with him. We were doing this live broadcast with Loco, and we did the Group B standings,
Here
right?
We go. This is when Loco swapped the standings or something, right?
Yeah. So we had we had to do like our predictions for who we thought was going to get out of like each group, and Loco was like, hey, I think that Gigabyte Marines are going to get out of like Group B, and Thorin was like, okay, so why do you think this? And Loco's like, okay, this is how he prefaced his argument. He's like, I have never watched them play a game before. I have never
lost it right there. I almost literally fucking tore this up and threw him out the window. Like, I couldn't even handle it. He actually started it that way, so that was like the first sentence. Like, he never watched them play the game.
He's like, I've never watched them play the game.
Never win the group.
But Splice is so fucking bad that I don't even think that they'll be able to beat anyone. Like, Thorin just couldn't have it. Couldn't let it go.
Like a fucking think tank, some focus group designed the statement that would just like tilt me the most, like Inception or some level of shit. Like the idea you start the sentence that way, it's like, you're fucking kidding me. He also thought, by the way, like he had that. This is the other thing about Loco is he just has that expression on his face. It's all like, isn't what I'm saying just perfectly reasonable? Like, no, that's probably the stupidest thing anyone's ever said. You idiot, think it through. It's like, what? So just because I've never watched them play, I can't predict they're going to win a group? Like, yeah, exactly. What are you talking about? This is madness.
Oh, and spoiler, guys, Gigabyte Marines didn't end up winning the group.
They didn't actually win the group.
Yeah, they didn't even, I think they ended up fourth in that group, actually. They ended up getting last because they're from a wildcard region, so.
Turned out Splice placed above them as well. Who knew?
Yeah, no, Splice ended up getting out. It was crazy. So.
I can't believe you actually remember that, because that probably is the ultimate, like, example of how someone could just treat the fuck out of me.
I'm better at handling that shit. I'm like, reasonable, especially when I'm a guest, because I was a guest on Summoning Insight there. So I'm like, I'm just here to give my like analysis. I'm not going off on anyone. I'm like, interesting point, Loco. However, I think that the team from a major region that I've watched play before has a better chance of winning the group play.
Exactly, yeah. No, the sad thing is, by the way, that's also a good example of what we were talking about, though, because here's the thing. If you've ever seen any of my talk shows that I've done where I've had actually like LMS experts on, guess what? They're biased in favor of LMS. Like, they always think like the Flash Wolves could do better in the past against this team. Now, if one of those guys made some crazy cases to how Gigabyte Marines would like, I don't know, he actually had a basis from the game, like, oh, well, actually better at early game than people think of. This AD carries better. If he had a reason then why they beat Splice, I'd actually go, okay, maybe he has a point. That wouldn't tilt me,
Mm-hmm. One of the things that interested me is a lot of people don't know this. There's an LCK commentator who specifically watches LCS and LEC, and he was the only LCK commentator. I don't know what his.
He's the only one who did the win or something, right?
Yeah. He was the one. Mm-hmm. And that was really, to all the Koreans, it was really strange because he also watches LCK because he's there on all the LCK days.
Okay.
So he just casually watches LCK, but then he would cast LCK or LCS and LEC in Korean. So obviously he has more depth for those leagues, but he was still at LoL Park, like watching, because I think he would cast from LoL Park. I'm not totally sure. But that was interesting. Because that's the first time I think I ever saw something like that.
I've never seen anyone who was Korean actually overcome Korean bias, by the way. That's why I always joke with Loco, like, stop saying you fucking American, mate.
And the weird thing is, I don't even think he speaks English.
I love T1.
So
really?
Like
holy shit.
Yeah, I think he's a full, like...
This guy must be the loneliest motherfucker in all of Korean esports. Just sat there like with his like Go G2 pennant, and everyone's like, "Fuck you! Why don't you support Korea? Why do you? If you don't like the country, leave it." There's using all mad slogans from like America or whatever. Like, if you ain't love Korea, leave Korea. Yeah. It's like, oh
man, I played in Korea before, dude. I know about the Go Home Yankee. Like, of course, I know about the Go Home Yankee.
I'm from England. I'm from fucking Britain. It's like, what?
Yeah, they're like, it's the same place. Like,
I know exactly.
Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess Americans are just misplaced Brits anyway. So,
by the way, what does everyone think though about the actual thing we talk about? Well, if we bring it back about Medic actually sort of like spiraling because someone.
It's just a hate thread. But the thing is, Reddit it always turns into a hate thread. Like,
that's the problem, isn't it? Yeah.
It can't not be a hate thread. Like, I don't know. That's just
it's because there's always those people lurking in the shadows, right? Who it's like they've just been there and they're like, it's like fucking the Phantom Menace, like when that scene where fucking Sidious or whatever it is, like with Darth Maul, he's like, and last we reveal ourselves to the Jedi. Like, there's people who are waiting, and the second there's a thread where the theme is like, fuck LS, some guy just comes out of the shadows and he's like, I've always hated LS since he was 14 years old and he did this. And then when in 2008, he also said this. Then in 2014, would you look at the picture that he took? It's so disrespectful. And you're like, holy fuck, it was just like a private investigator. What's this dossier that guy on me?
This is one of the fucked up things about Reddit. So, like, what Dom's saying is totally true, right? That the Reddit threads are always going to turn into flame. But, like, there's also, like, what Thorin's talking about, the fucked up people. So, I messaged the Reddit mods. This was sometimes last year.
Oh, that's useless. I've
No. So, I messaged them proof that there's a Discord that searches whenever I post like patch rundowns or like anything EDU and they downvote it. Go to any of my fucking patch rundowns, right? Like recent ones, all just downvoted instantly as soon as like anyone from the public posts it, right? It's always just spammed. Yeah. And someone from that Discord leaked me screenshots of the people like posting the links. Oh, LS just made the patch notes, get ready. You know what I mean? And it has like 100+ people in the fucking Discord. These basket cases. And then I remember, Dom, I think I DM'd you something that was happening on Reddit with you.
Yeah.
Where,
by the way, LS, you've really made it when, like, it's hard enough to get a Discord of 100 fans. You've got a Discord of 100 anti-fans who diligently, follow your career just to fuck with you.
It's some crazy shit.
That's amazing.
Man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I call to order the meeting of fuck LS, week 17. Like, do we all agree still fuck LS? Yes. So say us all. Like, fuck it. What is this shit?
Yeah.
Oh, it's terrible. No, it's so terrible. And then there's the other thing. I DM'd Dom a while back. So I don't know if it still happens to like this day because I don't know. But you remember what I linked you, right? There was like the comment that it said it had negative children or whatever. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about? Just because it mentioned you.
You'd have to refresh my memory. I'm not sure of like the
it's in the DMs with you.
Okay.
We haven't DM'd very often, so I imagine it would just still be right there. But like
let's see.
That, when I saw that, I thought like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like maybe I messaged you to message the mods because that seemed fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, I made a video about how shit the Reddit mods are, and it got like a couple 100,000 views. I don't think they like me too much after that. They might have been the victims of a Cut the Western shit at some point.
It was a good one. Go watch it, everyone. That's one of the classics. Is that one and then the Reckless Crime one. Those are the two ones you must watch.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing that I just know about Reddit in general is like it's impossible. Like even it could be an LS love thread, right? And the title could be like really love LS's co-streams, right? And then like the comments wouldn't even be about LS. They're like, yeah, I knew that LS's co-stream was good once I tuned into Dom's bullshit fuck shit co-stream, and this motherfucker is so retarded he makes LS look like a god. And it's like what the fuck? Like no one's even talking about me in this thread. Like how am I getting like heat from fucking Reddit? That's just how it always is.
That's where my favorite one was, where even though I wasn't doing it at all, I was not in any way promoting it, right? Because I'll just be real. One of the reasons I've never promoted the whole like fuck Travis angle is because it's not really like he can compete with me in the areas I'm in anyway. He's in a totally different area. He just does interviews. So like to me, he's fairly harmless. Like I don't bother with it. But obviously people always used to compare us because I used to do all those Reflections interviews. So there would always be people like, oh, I love Reflections interviews. They were like, and then everyone would obviously just come straight in like, yeah, unlike that dog shit that Travis does, the fucking sellout little bitch. Like he doesn't even dare say anything and all the players hate. It's like, fucking hell, like you've just backdoored the Travis hate thread into my thread. Like this is supposed to be just all appreciation.
Yeah, no,
the only thing that makes me uncomfortable is like appreciation threads for casters. I remember it made me actually really uncomfortable. I had like my first big appreciation thread recently for like LCK. And in the thread, so many casters from like LEC and LCS are just getting like shit on. And it seems like this is like a fucking normal thing. And it's like, no, this isn't okay. So I made a tweet about it because it's like, what the fuck? Like you don't need to shit on someone in order to praise someone else. Like that's just totally not needed. Because I remember all the times I would read comments where some, similar stuff would happen. Like I don't even fucking know. Maybe when I first came into casting, right? Like maybe Monty would be referenced. Like, oh, Monty's really good, but LS fucking sucks. It's like I don't need to read that. Like you can just say Monty's really good or something. It sucks, man. It makes me feel really bad, especially because I talk to a lot of the casters and like it's needless stress that doesn't need to fucking happen. It's maliciousness for no reason.
I agree. I actually hate it when that happens, and except when it's people that I dislike, and then I just laugh. So, I'm just keeping it real. Like, I think it's hilarious then. So I'm a hypocrite like everyone.
I don't even like when they praise me. Like at this point, I'm like, can we just go back to flaming me? Like this is just fucking weird at this point. Like I don't even like seeing positivity around me. I'd rather just like what they normally do, where it's like, because it's impossible to just dislike somebody on Reddit, right? Like if you dislike somebody, you can't ever say anything positive about them. So it can't be like, I hate Tarzan's attitude on stream, but he's actually like a really insane jungler. It's like, yeah, and he's fucking dog shit at the game and he can only play Graves. Like you have to just shit on like every part of the person's personality. So like, I don't know, for me it's just awkward when anyone is like praising me, because I'm so used to like the Reddit hate. It makes me feel more comfortable. But okay, so let's jump topics. There's something that we got to bring up on this show for sure, which is one of Ellis's favorite players, or I don't know if it's one of your favorite players, but it's somebody you're close with, Nemesis, right? I assume that's why you laughed, as you knew exactly where it was going. So
I knew exactly where it was going.
We've got different opinions on the show. I think I'm like more in the middle. Thorin obviously made a tweet about Nemesis recently. Doesn't consider him one of like the
Some would call that an IQ test, and a lot of people failed the IQ test, Dom. A lot of people can't read.
So
a lot of people can't read.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously you guys have differing opinions. Like, what do you think is like the strength of Nemesis? Like, why do you appreciate him so much as a player, LS? And then I'll like obviously Thorin can give his take on Nemesis as a player.
So Nemesis, I think there's a lot to unpack. I started talking to Nemesis around Worlds because he kept showing up in my stream. My first interaction with him was actually like 4 years ago. I did an OPGG review because he asked me like, how do I get noticed by teams? So it was just a random like $10 OPGG review. I thought nothing of it. And now he's Fnatic's mid laner and whatnot. But Nemesis, much like it reminds me of Caps actually in 2017. He reached out to me around Worlds, and we just started talking a lot about like draft and like stuff happening in scrims and games and everything that was happening. And that kind of diligence is really rare in the pro scene. Usually pro players are like fucking introverts. They don't go out of their way to like really seek out fucking anything. And he was in everyone's like streams. He's like always in streams looking for stuff and whatever. And then watching his pro view, because pro view is a new feature. Obviously in LCS and LEC and LCK if you have SK Telecom 5G. You can see a lot more of a player, and that's the type of shit that I've always liked when making like my comments about people in the past, like Crown and Khan and Alfari and Apto and stuff before he was popular.
If you want to get really specific, on details, you need to kind of see that, right? To know that they actually are that good at trading or whatever. Yeah, of course.
And so I thought he really stood out because he would not only would he actively seek out like new champions, all the fuck. I could probably message him on Discord right now to go and fucking play. I don't even know. Say something super stupid like fucking 80 Heimerdinger in mid lane. He would probably legitimately go and play it 5 games. If I asked, like on a fucking solo queue smurf or something. That's kind of rare. Because he would want to understand first why I'm even requesting it, but then to understand if it has any sort of legitimacy on his own accord. That's already a really nice trait. But I think his pro view is fantastic. I think he has one of the cleanest pro views of any Western player. Mm-hmm. I actually think he's insane, which is why I go to greater lengths to try to help him than,
So does it like sit really poorly with you, the fact that like in the community, one of the things that they always say, and I'm sure that you've heard this before, is that he has champion pool issues, right? Like people always,
it blows my fucking mind.
Yeah, people always mention that as like one of the criticisms of Nemesis.
Yeah. So I think where that I don't know where that criticism totally stems from.
LS, let me ask you a question. Yeah. What would you say this split? So spring split. You watch some LEC. What would you say would be the top 5 champions that someone should play in mid lane?
Right now, should play or does play?
Just over the split, what would the 5 strongest mid lane champions have been generally?
Azir,
Syndra,
Azir, Syndra, Veigar, Velcoz.
Holy shit!
And
one more.
Ornn mid, Rumble mid, something like that.
Yeah, Ornn. Mm-hmm. I think those would probably have been the best 5.
Okay, Nemesis plays 3 of those. He plays Ornn, Syndra, Veigar.
He plays Ornn, Syndra, Veigar.
He never played Azir in the split.
He played it in the
playoffs. I guess Azir spiked towards the end. Azir spiked towards the end.
He plays more champions than what just ends up coming out on stage. And maybe I'm privy to that information.
You realize, though, that that's essentially this is the problem with people.
So for me, there's a couple champions.
You've nailed it right there. This is the problem with people critiquing or praising players, is that ultimately, unless someone's in the best team in the world, when you critique or praise a player, you are making an implication about his team, his teammates, and how they use him.
Right.
So when you say what you just said there, which is an opinion I'm sure Nemesis himself agrees with, like, of course I play more than I play on stage. Well, with the way that everyone else would explain his team, they would say he's the main part of the draft that doesn't have all these options. Him and Hylissang seem like the most limited players. The other players are the ones who play everything. So what in his team, because I would have said his team actually is one of the ones that actually now, they're not like the meme of last year, which was real, where they all had super limited champion pools. Now they have this, they can play tons of stuff. So why would he be the one where he becomes like the pinch, where he's kind of the one who doesn't play everything? Like, does his own team know how to use him? Because I think they know how to use him perfectly, LS. That's why they're a really good team, probably the best European team right now. They've figured out who he is, and they play to all his strengths, and they play away from all of his weaknesses, and he looks the best he can be.
Yeah, so he's actually played quite a lot of unique champions. And then when you look at the bans, I think that there's obviously some champions that he probably would have played that he doesn't.
Okay. Is there something they perma against him, like a 0 or something possible?
No, I mean there's a lot of bans that are coming out. Like there's a lot of Pantheon bans. Yeah, there's a lot of second bans.
Sometimes he was prepping something like a one trick, and then people banned it against him or something.
Maybe something like that.
Okay.
This gets weird because I don't want to go. And so I've said this many times on stream. I sort of treat it like I'm under NDA. I don't think I've like said or revealed anything. Obviously, I'm not with Fnatic, but I treat it as if I am because yes, I know way more than I probably should.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
So I don't want to go into whatever. Like they're in the finals next week. Nemesis is. I mean, he has an ocean. And I think it's ridiculous to say that he doesn't. And like what Thorin's saying, Fnatic's very aware. And Nemesis, interestingly enough, from my own perspective, he's going to be the most adaptable. Like whatever they need him to sort of do, he'll bite the bullet. And that's just his personality. In general, yeah. The same way that I can request him to go and play random champions, he will. He'll bite the bullet for whatever's necessary if he thinks that it's going to be the best chance at getting everyone to cross the finish line together.
That's surprising. I would have said like knowing Fnatic, I would have thought that Bwipo would be like the person that would be willing to like play anything because there's so many times where he's playing like
in the past he was. I would have said last year probably.
Yeah, I mean, but even in this playoffs, I mean, he's playing Zac top, like he's playing Maokai, he's playing a bunch of things that I wouldn't think that he would want to play knowing Bwipo.
Okay.
Yep.
So I guess one thing about like the topic of champion pools, I guess the perception of why he doesn't have or he has champion pool issues is because I think that like your top 5 champions that you think that mid laner should play. So Velcoz, Ornn, Syndra, Azir, and Veigar is what you said.
Scale and shit.
Yeah. So like for me from watching, I would have thought that if you're talking about those champions, you would at least have like Zoe and LeBlanc in there as well, because those are the champions that are pulling pulling a lot of bans, etc. Like a lot of like even in LCK, I saw people like playing Zoe in like first 3 picks, like they were drafting it. So
yeah.
So why do you think that those champions are like, I guess, like overrated, or like why do you think it's not important to be a Zoe master, a LeBlanc master, things like that? Assuming that we just know, like you don't have to go into like his champion pool.
Yeah. So I think Zoe has a lot of weaknesses as a champion, and even though she's like a no theme stat checker because her bubble is always valuable, her damage is always valuable. She can fit into a lot of team compositions. Just because she fits in doesn't mean that she's on theme with it. And so Zoe oftentimes will look like the black sheep in the team comp. Zoe comes in early and then goes unpunished, whereas like champions like Syndra should be able to beat her in laning phase. But most people that play Syndra are incompetent at Syndra, the same way that most people that play LeBlanc are incompetent at LeBlanc, and they're not really as threatening as they realistically should be. It's sort of like the difference between a really good Lee Sin and a shit Lee Sin. Like people that pick Lee Sin and they can barely pilot it, or like good Jace, bad Jace. It's the same way with Syndra. So a lot of Zoe's counters, and AJ's. So a lot of Zoe's counters actually require you to be competent at certain champions. So you could argue that Zoe's good for that reason, but I don't think that's what makes her like a top 5 champion. LeBlanc and Zoe also, if they come in on blue side or if they come in blind, they're infinitely weaker, generally, if the enemy mid laner or the enemy team is really good or competent. Because it's very easy to sculpt drafts against them. Like, of the champions that I listed, you can say that LeBlanc does beat Azir, but I don't think it's really arguable that Azir is probably going to be holistically better for his team comp in most cases, and do more. And it's not like Azir can't beat LeBlanc, because he can. There's obviously things that you can do to mitigate pressure and play around certain things. Champions like kha'zix is actually having a resurgence because of a lot of the mid lane picks, and because of the way. Kassadin.
Okay.
All right. There you go. So he's starting to have a resurgence. I mean, we just had a Velcoz pick in LCK yesterday. I've been calling for Xerath for so long, or Xerath, however
so
you want to pronounce
I feel like
him.
those are very specific, though, because Velcoz,
yeah, these
Xerath,
are specific.
Like, they would pretty much only be into, in my mind, Azir and Cassio. I can't really see the other champions that would fit into.
Velcoz is a gigahard Zoe counter. She can't play.
Wait, Velcoz is a gigahard Zoe counter?
Yeah. She really annihilate. Yeah.
I would love to see Niski play that matchup, bro. Because the thing you also have to understand is Zoe is such a bullshit RNG champion where you can win so many
years.
Yeah, but you can win so many lane phases. Like, I think it's so hard to say something beats Zoe because it's like, okay, what happens if she gets redemption on third wave? If she gets redemption on third wave, then she just comes back with like double the items. And then, like, I don't know if you saw, like, you probably remember the game versus FlyQuest during the split because you probably co-streamed it, where he RNG'd a redemption, got pushed level 2, and then RNG'd a blue smite, and then smited away the enemy blue. He just solo contested Santorin's blue and just like won the game off of it pretty much. It's just like, oh, he has blue buff level 3, and it's just like impossible to play.
It was so there was a game in LCK where Zoe rolled redemption, ignite, redemption. Mm-hmm. And it's like, how can the enemy mid play? I don't even, like, what the fuck? Like, sometimes that happens, but no, Velcoz versus Zoe. I know it's not a popular matchup, but Velcoz does shit on Zoe. Yeah, it's really, really hard.
I can see some like reasons for that. Like if you ever are forward, you're just guaranteed to hit the E into full combo on Velcoz. That type of stuff.
And the other thing about Velcoz that I guess I would want to say is I think he's I think he's arguably maybe even the hardest mid lane champion. I think him and Xerath are probably up there.
There's a reason you'd struggle to name 5 players who are really good on these champions.
One of them's Froggen.
You would really, you would be really hard pressed to find someone that really pilots these champions. And I think that's another reason that we won't see them as much. Like, Xerath did just get buffed. He was hovered in LCK twice last night. So I don't know if that means that maybe like teams are practicing him. But it really frustrates me that the meta's been as stagnant as it is, because I've been very like vocal about like meta picks that can come in and change, and what I like Twitter documents it, whatever, right? And the scrims that I had versus like Korean teams and Chinese teams and LMS teams and whatnot on stream in November and December, like those were really big. I don't know. The meta's really slow to change and adapt, and I think that people are just very comfortable playing like Azir, LeBlanc, Zoe, Victor, even like what the fuck. Dude, Victor always just leaves me feeling like, what are you doing?
I mean, it has no agency in the game until like 2 items, and then it becomes a champion.
And even then, it's like, would you not rather just have the enemy mid champion instead of Victor?
Well, I mean, Victor. I mean, I normally see it into like 2 champions, which would be like Orianna and Azir, where both of them are just like free farm lanes for Victor, and then you just eventually get to the point where like, Victor can just output more. Like a Victor at 4 items is just good. So I think that's just like the idea of it.
Yep.
But I mean, I think that in general having like a weird champion pool. I mean, I don't think many people understood how good Ornn was, but for Fnatic, I mean, it's looked amazing. Every time that Nemesis plays it, he is actually like taking over games on Ornn mid. Like he's running down the whole enemy team.
Fnatic's the first fucking team that builds Ornn right. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Dude, when Ornn first came out into the pro scene and like everyone was starting to pick him, because I harped on about him since Worlds, right? I was saying every fucking other Worlds tweet, like, where's Ornn? Why isn't Ornn getting picked? Because Ornn's been broken since April of last year. Like, just fucking went completely untouched. And there were so many players, they're building fucking Frozen Fist on Ornn instead of Sunfire Cape. Like, they're allergic to the fucking 725 HP so that they can get 15 more armor. They need the mono. They need the CDR. Even though Orin's going to then build like Kindle Gem, or he's going to have scaling CDR, he's going to have 33%. So the argument's like 33% versus 45%. It's negligible, right? And then you have the Orins that would build like fucking Ronduins, or they'd build stone plates so they could activate it and then do fuck all nothing. And it's like, it just makes me want to vomit, man. It's like people don't even bother to research the champions that they're even picking. They're just doing it because someone else picked it, and they don't use their brain.
Yeah. I think that Ornn is just one of like the most like disgusting balance like issues in the game. Like, I don't think there's ever a reason why a champion should get 11 kills worth of gold for free for hitting a certain like level, you know? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, oh, so you got to level 13 even, and you unironically get 3,300 gold worth of stats. That is 13 solo kills. Like, what is that? Like, how is that in the game still? Like, it just seems so fucking wrong to me.
Let's take a look at Wukong's old passive, all right?
Yeah, man, that champion is, and then Rag goes
actual
and
theory
makes
on
it,
that, by the way, Dom, is that's another one of those areas where unfortunately you'll never get the pro scene properly balanced as long as Riot is obsessively looking at the amateur scene. Because I'm sure if you go into a random plat or fucking gold game in EU West or NA and you see an Ornn playing, I bet even if they get all that gold, they do nothing with it. I bet they do the upgraded items for the teammates do fucking nothing. I bet it doesn't even take over the game half the time. But in pro play, it's going to destroy the game because you've already taken a player where, as we say, the lane conditions are alien to how they normally would be. Like, you should be even at that point in the game, or you're scaling and you should get your advantage from now on. Like, why would you get both the advantage and you didn't get punished, and then your teammates get all the power as well? Like, what is this shit? Like, who would even design a champion like that?
I mean, probably the same people that designed Aphelios. Probably the same people that decided that Shaco needs 55 fucking nerfs because it has a 54% win rate in solo queue and diamond.
I'll
like,
even give you a contrast.
Disgusting.
When we were discussing the really hard champions to pilot, like Xerath, Velcoz, great examples because they've basically never been super OP, really widespread champions, no matter how powerful they were, because they're so difficult to actually use in a pro game. What I actually like about those champions is that they obviously, if you were the absolute best Xerath, it's a nightmare. Like, that's like so insanely hard. But Easy Hoon was like a monster on that. Like, it's actually really hard to play against that. But it's also really hard to do that. Like, the actual like level of burden of execution is so high. I don't mind that champion being super strong. Same with Velcoz, because listen, Velcoz looks OP right until you get into those scenarios where you needed mobility and you have none and you get absolutely gangbanged by everyone. So I actually like that. It's very clear, unlike Aphelios, it's very clear where this thing is strong. It's really hard to do the best things with it. And if you are someone who doesn't reach the threshold, all the negatives crush you, and the opposing team has ways in and win conditions, and it's always obvious to the opponent how they should play against you. Whereas that's the whole complaint pretty much everyone's had about Velcoz the last like 4 months, is like, you don't even really always know where his strengths are, you don't know how to play against him. It doesn't always seem like you have to be insanely skilled to do the things that are super OP. Like those are the contrasts, in my opinion, between what I like in design philosophy. I don't mind those other champions. What I hate is the champion where it's like that. It's like, it's OP and therefore anyone can use it and dominate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm significantly more comfortable playing into champions like Xerath and Velcoz because they have very like defined strengths and defined weaknesses, whereas like other champions just feel like they do way too much. Like,
put it this way, Dom, think about in jungle when Nidalee's OP. I actually never think that that's like the worst champion in the game, no matter how OP it is, because it's really fucking hard to do that shit. Like, that is not an easy. There's no scrub picking Nidalee and going, haha, this is OP. It's like, you'll get your head smashed in the first 5 levels, mate, if you know what you're doing with that. Like, that's a hard champion to pilot. So it only looks OP because the player's OP.
I mean, I think the thing is like the problem with Nidalee was always that, like, when it sees pro play, it's because farming becomes way too valuable and it can end the clear speed is just way too high. So like the way, like I had to play a bunch of Nidalee at the end of my LCS career, and I don't even think I was like the most insane Nidalee, but like teams couldn't give it to us first pick because if I'm just clearing my jungle and not fucking up, then you're just losing the game at all times. It's just like this constant pressure, and then especially in certain metas where like healing is OP, certain items are OP, like you can just contribute to your team comp no matter what.
Dude,
you don't even need to hit the spear.
That in itself agrees with what I'm saying, because the reason why they have to make it so that the clear's too easy in that scenario is because even fucking clearing the jungle on that champion is hard. Like, it's not actually, it's not like one that you just walk up.
Well, they simplified it. They've simplified it.
As a low-level player, you don't walk up on the Nidalee and then do what LS would advise. Like, look at all the lanes while you fight. You'll miss something, you'll ruin it, you'll be done at like level 3.
Yeah, and they've simplified the champion, which is something that I kind of like didn't like about the game. Like part of the reason why I thought Nidalee was like so good in the hands of a pro player is because there was 3 auto resets in the kit. So each form change was an auto reset plus the Q and Cougar form was an auto reset. So the way you saw like a good Nidalee clear jungle was by abusing multiple auto resets in the kit. And then they changed it to like this basic like, okay, you just throw the spear and then you like maybe get an auto reset on your Q. I don't know. I just didn't like the
That's what was good. Direction. It actually took skill even just to farm.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you can farm up with skill and then also make all these ganks and all these players and not fuck up, and then even pulling off the ganks takes skill. Like, I like shit like that. That's how I want the game to be.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with those champions being OP.
Yeah. Well, instead we have Trundle being super OP and being like first pick by everyone under the sun. So we've really got a great situation for jungle here. Jungle is just super OP right now. It's just too good, I think.
That's also what people don't realize is whack about certain things in esports, because let's face it, we have to have things in the game for plebs, right? So think about every kid who dreamed of being an NBA player, right? Your dream is this: you're in the backyard, mom's like, come in for dinner, supper's ready, and you go, all right, mom, and then you're like, he's down by 2, he takes the shot, it's in, he scores. No one in the world would be like, oh, I dream of being a pro player. And Trundle comes into the team fight. He's put the pillar up. He's walking slowly towards the enemy. They're going to win the world championship. And Trundle's done it again. Like, whose dream is that? That's a nightmare. No one wants to win the world. No one's picking the Trundle world skin. What the fuck is this shit like?
Hey, if FlyQuest win worlds, they might. You know, they fucking might.
So. Can you imagine that, dude? That would be the most tree. Yeah.
What the fuck? Yeah, no, the E would definitely be the trophy. Like, it has to just be the fucking world's trophy.
By the way, that would have been, I've just realized, that would have been the most troll move ever. If that SK Telecom that made it to finals and lost to Samsung, if they'd have actually somehow won that game and Hooney just picked like Lucian top world skin, that would actually be amazing.
Yeah.
And just every time, just hover it. Just like that. Lucian's still here, baby.
Ellis, how do you feel about like strength of the regions right now? Like outside of LPL, because you said you don't watch LPL. Like, did you think EU is just the best? Outside
no,
of LPL?
It's really weird. So like, okay, so we can just talk about NA really quick. It's only Cloud9, right? Yeah. That's just how it is.
It's obvious.
I think Cloud9 would probably. So I made a comment on stream when people asked me. I think Cloud9 would be 3rd through 5th in Europe. I don't think they would beat Fnatic or G2.
Yep.
So
you mean Fnatic or Mad Lions? Sorry. You know.
Yeah. I mean, of course. So I think that Cloud9 would be 3rd through 5th in EU, and the way that LCK is that it's a fucking mess. Where again, middle of the pack is 4th through 10th, and the top 3 teams have lost to basically anyone that is on the right hand side. They can drop games to anyone that's on the right hand side. So I made a comment that I think it's not impossible for Western teams to enter the west side of the bracket in LCK, but I don't know if they stick or stay because of the way that like Korean tournaments tend to go. And Thorin probably knows more about this. The longer that you're in Korea, and if they're constantly just playing against you, the last time that a foreigner bested Koreans was 20 years ago. It was a Canadian, at least in a Korean full major like tournament.
As in, he kept playing there, and they could practice against him, and he didn't just come in as like a one-off and just do a crazy run. Basically, what LS said.
Right. Yeah. That was Guillaume Petri in StarCraft. He's the only Western player that has an OSL title, which is an LCK title. In an official Korean like circuit, not just like a one-off tournament. So yeah, I don't deny that certain teams could get to the west side. I don't know what it would mean. And then when you throw LPL into the mix, I have no fucking clue because I haven't watched it at all.
It's too weird. I think LPL is so strange to like even analyze, because even patch wise,
there's 16 teams, right?
Yeah, they are, maybe even more. I'm not sure. I've been watching a decent amount of LPL. Maybe I thought there was like 20.
16.
Okay, maybe it's 16. The point is like the way that China works, and I've always thought this was super strange, is that they play 17. They play on different patches than everyone else, and they play with different champions enabled. So when you go to like LPL, you're watching Wukong every game. Like, you are most likely, if you're tuning into a random LPL game, you're most likely going to watch Wukong top lane, and we don't see this in any other region. So I feel like that's so weird to have like a global tournament at the end and not just have everyone play on like standardized patches. Like, I think that there should just be days where it's like, okay, at this point in your league, on this day, patch shifts, and like everyone just like has to abide by the same rules.
Yes.
So it's so hard to like judge LPL teams. Also, LPL is like, so insanely aggressive that it like doesn't make sense. They rely so heavily on mechanical outplays a lot of the time. Whereas like when you looked at FPX in Worlds, you know, FPX had like pretty good setups. You know, like their plays were made based on like, you know, do and B, pushing lane, roaming with TN, etc. But it doesn't look like that right now in LPL. Like there's so many like times where I'm like, oh, this guy just solo invaded on Lee Sin with 0 prio and just died for free. Okay, like next play. So
that's why it's actually cool that that team was the one that won Worlds. Like when IG won Worlds, that was kind of like the extreme, that caricature that people always made of LPL, of like you just have superstar players who just shit on everyone and the junglers just go and fucking ape shit 24/7. Like what was so cool about FPX winning is that was like the most tactical team probably ever to come out of the LPL. Like that's like the sort of team that like Monty wouldn't be automatically biased against because the stupid idiots just running in all the time. Like they actually had like a whole system that looked, that could have been a Korean team. Yeah, I mean, obviously, had a Korean mid laner, to be fair, so, you know.
I would love to hear LS's opinion on Doinby, because obviously, Nemesis was he had some strong words about Doinby. He thought Doinby was, like, probably one of the worst mids of the tournament, where I think that Doinby
I said that, too.
You think Doinby's bad?
No, all right. So, if you look at my top 20 players at Worlds list, I had Doinby on the fucking list. Right? Mm-hmm. This is the weirdest thing. Like people fucking just, I don't know what kind of mental gymnastics they're doing. He's on the fucking list as one of the best players at Worlds that I had, like on the top 20, right?
Where in the top 20 though?
I think he was like 12th or something. Maybe he was fairly high up, wasn't he?
Let me LS,
because I had him high on my list. Like he was like 3rd on my list. Like I love this guy's play style because I'm a jungler.
I had Doinby at 18 actually.
18, motherfucker. Okay.
I had
Let's
him
hear
18. Why. So the no, I mean I think he's a good player, right? Mm-hmm. Like obviously if he's 18th on the fucking Worlds list, he can't be one of the worst players at Worlds. That doesn't even fucking make sense.
Yeah.
So the comment that got taken out of context was that he was a really weak like laner at Worlds, which if you go into like the RIP Chinese pro views and you watch the games and whatnot, his lane state was in unfavorable states. And I'm not trying to fucking say like the random videos and analysis videos. They're like, Doinby's lane was really bad when it was actually good. Like it's an intentional freeze or it's like an intentional lane manipulation. And he tries to get harped on for that. But there was lots of moments where like he would be taking really bad trades or would be standing in really weird places, like very abusable things, and it doesn't end up mattering. But I don't think that changes the fact that he's weak at laning. When you think of like someone like Rookie, or you think of someone like Faker, you think of someone like Showmaker, who don't find themselves in these spots, even if they don't end up winning the games or something, or if things that they pull off rely on mistakes happening before they do. Like that's the thing that didn't sit well with me. So the comment got taken completely out of context. Like Nemesis, I believe even elaborated on it. I elaborated on it ad nauseum, even on Twitter, basically saying that like the people that are flaming us don't even understand what the fuck they're looking at. They can't even tell you what a good mid laner is or like what a good laner looks like. They couldn't even coach a diamond player on how to fundamentally get better. How the fuck do they know what they're looking at? Because the skills necessary to know what you're looking at, the skills that you're going to need to do similar things, and which they can't. And I know that's really weird, but it's like that comment got taken really weird. And then it felt like people just chose not to like accept like that he was on my top 20 list, or that I've talked about him very positively in previous years. Mm-hmm. And there was like multiple examples that I linked on Twitter and whatnot. Because he is a good player. But I don't think he's a strong laner. Like,
yeah. So I guess it comes down to the fact that you value laning really highly in terms of like what makes you consider
skill. Yeah.
Okay. What
he's
makes
also
you consider
saying, like,
laner good?
Like when he says with the Pro View example, he's also essentially saying, now this is funny because people think this is like a reductive argument that actually dispels itself by not having a basis, but it isn't. It's where every single qualitative judgment in the game ends up, which is when LS watches the Pro View, so he uses the eye test of what he can see the player doing. He judges whether they won that game or not, whether they were strong and whether they were the best player, optimal player, based on his personal preferences as to how someone should play most effectively, most optimally right now. Now, the point here with that is, this is the same thing you see all the time. The two most contentious statements you can make in the game is this player on a really good team isn't actually that good, But how can he be? The team's winning. It's like, well, that actually shows that you aren't looking at the game because you wouldn't make that argument. You'd make it based on that he's good. The other one is this player who's on a bad team is actually really good. Now, what's perfect about this, by the way, guys, is this happened all of last year, and everyone on Reddit that I saw was pretty much wrong because everyone on Reddit went like this. Wow, why the fuck do people keep saying this Broxer guy isn't the best jungler in Europe? Look, Fnatic's one of the best teams, and he plays on that team, and look, he had a pop-off game. Meanwhile, there was a guy on this team called SK Gaming called Selfmade, but SK is shit. They are the worst team. If he was really the best player, he'd carry their team. Now, what's perfect is they fucking replaced each other, and everyone who said that Selfmade was the better player looks like a fucking king right now, and everyone who said Broxer was a beast, now he's on TL, you can't find them. They're hiding under a fucking rock waiting to evolve a fifth cell. Like, it's fucking unbelievable. The point is, everyone who got caught in this trap I'm talking about in season 10, you weren't using qualitative judgment. You were just riding narratives, or you were just going based on results. And results-based thinking will never make sense in that regard, because that type of results-based thinking means you have to believe Teddy is shit while he has a Jin Air uniform on, and that he becomes a god when he puts on the fucking... Like, you think he's like a human when he's got Jin Air, and then he becomes a Power Ranger when he puts on the Team 1 uniform. That just shows you don't know the game.
One of the most interesting things in the world that I or like in all of the regions that I think is happening right now is APK's AD carry hybrid.
Okay.
Like if either of you have never watched APK games, I mean, I
just saw them when
they're bottom of the standings.
I don't
It is like it's Teddy V2 basically.
Okay.
That's what's happening. He has, I think, the highest stats basically of any AD carry, and his team is like bottom of the standings. I think they're in 7th right now, I think, off the top of my head. But yeah, it's like Teddy V2 is happening right now in LCK.
Yeah. And
no one's talking about it. And that's fucking weird.
I don't know. I feel so. I guess to go back to like the DMB point, I had like something to talk about it. So I think that like maybe his laning on certain champions is not the best, and that's like why he doesn't play it. But I thought that his laning, like when he played versus IG in semifinals, I thought it was pretty good on the champions he was playing. Like he was playing against rookie, and he's playing champions that I feel like really should not be able to like lane close as well as he did. So into like Syndra, he was playing the Rumble with Predator. And I think that like his laning on champions that play like losing matchups, like melees and losing matchups, is actually really good about like how he like chooses which CS to go for, how he chooses like when to like sack waves, keep his HP up in lane, how he takes resets, etc. Like I think that type of stuff is like underrated with his playstyle. The thing with Doinb is like so even saying like he's weak at laning or something is also sort of like when I went further to like try to defend myself, and I listed all the mid laners at Worlds, and I think I had Doinb at like 7th. Mm-hmm. Right? So you'd have like Chovy, Showmaker, Faker, all those people above him.
Cap. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good mids at Worlds. Yeah,
right. So then when you go back and listen to the comment that was made, it says that he's one of the worst mid laners at Worlds, and it was made in regards to group stages forward.
Yeah.
So obviously some of the mid laners that are on that list are not there anymore. Mm-hmm. Or they've been eliminated by that point. Like we're moving into quarters, or like groups are almost done and some teams are out. It's not that far-fetched, I don't think, to make that comment, because there are clearly just better mids. I don't think anyone would disagree with, like, that was still in the tournament.
Yeah.
Now, it's not necessarily what makes him a good player. That's an entirely different thing. Because you can be a really good player, but be sort of like not the best at your role. That's a very common thing.
Put it this way, I can give you a quick example. Like in my main game, CSGO, the best player in the world right now is a player who also uses the sniper rifle a lot, right? Simple? Yeah, but no one calls him the best sniper because he doesn't use the sniper rifle in any of the ways that traditionally the snipers do. Like he doesn't just sit back and hold an angle and like try to just take one spot or block you coming in. He just uses it basically just as the best gun to kill people with. So no one calls him the best sniper, but he is the best player. Now, if you can't understand that distinction, you've just got lost in the terminology there. But I totally get what he means by it. It's the same reason why I always thought Hai was one of the best players for MENA, but I never thought he was the best mid laner for even a second in his life.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah. He's very comparable to Doinb. But for me, for example, like when he was beating Bjergsen, like I considered him a better mid laner than Bjergsen, because of, like, when I'm just viewing like a mid laner versus mid laner, I'm not thinking about just their like how they play mid. I'm thinking about how they play the whole game and like who is going to impact the game more positively over the course of the game.
Yeah, like the all around game.
Yeah, and for me as a jungler, I'm very like, I understand my bias here to like, if I'm making a fucking play that looks really good and my mid laner can see my play and understand how good it is for me and like do the judgment in their head of like sacrificing like potentially one wave and like some experience to help me out and just be there for the dive, or like being able to read, hey, I'm ganking bot and they have TP advantage and our top laner doesn't have a window to TP, so leaning to my side of the map and like being able to like play around me would be just like the nicest thing to play with. Like, I don't think that Tien is a better player than Doinb, for example. I think that any jungler would love playing with that motherfucker because he is everywhere all the time.
Well, this is actually one thing, interestingly, that you bring up, Dom, because I was going to bring this up, but you guys were still having your part of the discussion. Here's the other thing about Doinb, which is why this is why you can't judge players in isolation unless, unfortunately, you're only going to judge things like learning and mechanics. If you want to judge them as a player in the game, in their team, you have to take their team into account. So, for example, it's all well and good us praising the things that Doinb does that are great and contrasting him with, let's just pick a player who's obviously mechanically better but has never done anything that Doinb has. So Bjergsen would be an example, right? So if you, by the definition you're talking right now, but by the definition we're talking right now, Dom, by the same metrics you're setting up, Doinb's a better player than Bjergsen, right?
Definitely. For me, like, I guess a more modern example would be like somebody like Showmaker. I would value.
Yeah, there's a good example. Someone's got mad skills, of course, exactly. But here's the problem with that setup. Here's the problem with that setup, okay, is, right, look at Doinb's whole career. I'm not joking. His whole career in China goes like this. Doinb plus super mechanical Chinese or Korean jungler. He always has one. He always has a monster Lee Sin player. Swift. Klid, fucking flawless, wasn't even terrible when he played with him. Obviously now he's got Tian. Like, this guy always has a monster in the jungle. And look, and here's the other thing. They always look like a player where it's like mechanics are their main thing and they're not the brain jungler, because they don't need a brain jungler. And so what's great is I think both players get overrated. What happens is, it's like Niski and Svenskeren last year. I think they probably both get slightly overrated because they worked so well together. Mm-hmm. So what happens is the brain dead, not really brain dead, he's not a super smart mechanical jungler, gets piloted by a mid who's helping him the whole time in the best 2v2 role in the game. And then the mid laner, there's another thing. You'd play a lane out very differently if you could have the threat for the opposing mid laner all the time of like, if I go too deep on this guy because it looks like he's making a mistake, this guy jungler just pops in on his ass with the support. Like, that'd be a nightmare if you know he has that potential. He can actually do essentially certain things with his team that like individually Faker would do. So Faker would pretend he was going to go all in, but he wasn't, just to get an extra trade or something. Like, he can do that with his team. So the point here is not that like that means Doinb's bad. That actually means Doinb's very good at using his team, but it's hard to contrast him with like Showmaker if Showmaker doesn't have a team like that. If Showmaker just plays the lane and he's just a mid laner. You know what I mean? That's why it gets so murky. That's why I prefer if people just explain what they like. Like, I like players like this, they do this, and I prefer that aspect.
Yeah, which is the context I'm trying to get. And then also, I like the way that he takes pressure off his team in draft. Like, I mean, if you look at a lot of FPX's drafts during Worlds, a lot of them were like early drafting Nautilus, and then they swap the Nautilus mid into like a matchup that people would think would be like kind of unplayable, and then they just get a good matchup bot lane, and he does much better in like the bad matchup mid than the enemy bot lane does in the bad matchup bot, and like gives value to his team in ways like that. So
he's probably the only player I think I've ever seen who was a mid laner who his entire, I mean, people will say hi, but I was more like shot call the team. He literally is like almost like a third support in the game, like a fucking third jungler or support who just like gets another lane ahead. Like, that's amazing. That's why it's so sick he won Worlds. I don't think it'll ever happen again. I don't think you'll ever get a player like that who'll be like the world champion. So the idea it happened once is so cool, because it's nothing that like every normal metric of being a good player that doesn't, it's kind of alien to that. It's unorthodox.
Yeah, I guess like the only player, like every team that has won Worlds has always had like an insane mid laner outside of Crown and Doinb outside.
And even then, Crown earlier in his career at least was insane.
I think at the point where he won Worlds, he was already declining.
He was already starting to be a bit washed there.
Yeah, it was already, yeah.
I mean, I guess that's another thing. What do you think Crown's done? Do you think Crown is done? I mean, yeah.
Okay,
he's playing Challenger in Korea.
Now that he's off CLG, I mean, I'm a streamer for CLG. Mm-hmm. I guess it's sort of whatever. I heavily dissented against the pickup prior to it happening.
Why is that?
Like, I played against him several times in Korean solo queue,
Yeah, all right, and if he's in LS's ELO, then like there's a fucking problem. Like,
LS was fucking him up on Annie. He couldn't even handle that shit.
No, I played against him. I played against him like 4 or 5 times. Sometimes I played against him like in mid and then jungle, and then also because there's so many players that lived with me at the time. Like the Selfie was here, Max is here, the former BBQ players were all here, and sometimes they would just meet him too. And so, like, I'd stand behind the computer and we would be like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, and like sometimes even ask, like, is that actually him? And yeah, it was. And it was really weird. So he had like 2 IDs. He had one that was like mid high D1 / master. And then he had another ID that was like grandmaster. But the one that was like D1 master would fall to D2, D3. And it had like 2,000 games. Jesus. And then it would go back up a little bit, and then it would fall again and whatnot. And sometimes people get trapped.
How did he play 2,000 games like in between like on Korean servers, considering that he played in NA for the whole last year? Like, what the fuck?
You can grind like, I don't know. You can grind like 500, 600 games a month, right?
Yeah, I guess he just did it during the off season.
But no, like I don't know. It goes more in depth, but it just felt like he wasn't aware of anything. That was I mean, he's back in apparently Challenger Series Korea, and he's doing okay, I guess. I haven't personally watched the games.
What about this then?
Seen it.
And I was the fucking crown guy, okay?
Yeah.
Like, where's the fucking bias now?
So here's the question, though, LS. What is the implication from this? Like, obviously, the problem I have with this is, like, every time this topic's brought up, people only go to the psychological angle of, like, well, maybe he just doesn't confident. Like, the problem I have with that is it's fun for speculation, but it's so murky. Like, no one will ever know any of that shit. We're just guessing at stuff. Is the implication, like, does he need to be coached a certain way to be good? Does he need certain teammates? Was he just only good a certain year in a certain meta? Like, why is the guy who was a monster in season 6 been so whacking on some of the other seasons? And then, obviously, last year he had that little resurgence in it. Yeah. What's your kind of take on why he can be like? I've never seen a player with such variance in his level.
I don't know what the hell can cause. Well, I mean, I have ideas of what happens, which causes like player declines, like from elite star players to like middle of the pack to then falling off, and it's because I don't know. I'm very worried that it's going to happen right now to Keen in the LCK. Because how many years in a row can you keep just being the best like top laner, and your fucking team just you're probably gonna be like I'm losing to this fucking 10th place top laner that he can't even spell top lane, and he negative 20 CS deficit to me every game, and it's like apparently that guy's winning. I mean, yeah, I guess it just doesn't fucking matter if you play like this, and the effort that needs to be put forth to maintain that level of play is stressful. So at what point does someone like that mentally break when they're on a team and they just can't get success? Like, so I'm really worried about Keen. I'm really worried about Summit because Sandbox is now in promotion. They're in relegation zone, locked for LCK.
Deserved after that damn one game. Deserved.
And I think Summit's the best top laner in LCK, and I think that's fucking insane. That one of the best players in the league is now in relegation, might end up actually going back to challengers. That just blows my mind.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the weird thing about Crown was like, and the reason why I think there was promise for the CLG pickup was that he actually looked good on carry champions in NA in season 9. So like when he was on Optic, it was him and Meteos carrying like every single game.
He had some big pop-off games that split me.
He really carried like a bunch of different games. So like it was so weird to me to see him play on CLG and then have CLG just be so much worse of a team. And I guess like for me, like the way that I tried to view it is I just gained respect for what Power of Evil must have brought to the team in terms of like some level of leadership and just like champion pool and the way he wanted to play. And maybe Crown was just kind of like trying to like fit into the team, whereas like every team that Power of Evil's on, like he is a main part of the team.
Listen, whenever you have to replace your mid laner with Poor Belter, who's just been sat on the bench, and then all your fans are like, finally, at least the competent mid laner's in the game. Like, you've probably got fucking problems with your roster at that point in time.
Mm-hmm. I respect Pobelter. I think that he's somebody.
Yeah, but if you thought you had a superstar player, it's obviously utterly failed, doesn't it? If you have to bring Pobelter in as the replacement.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I don't know.
Like if that's Jensen, you're not just giving up on him and bringing Pobelter in. Surely.
Yeah, I don't think Pobelter is like a top mid laner in the league anymore. But I'd say he's like in my mind, he's like a serviceable.
He's just
like,
competent. That's why I say it's like that just shows how bad Crown was. Like he wasn't like basically. It's not even that anyone was wondering, is there something we can change? But it's like, it just washed. There's no point playing.
Yeah.
Maybe he can be good in Korea again, but it was clearly no point.
That's so crazy to me that he actually like kept on playing. Like I thought that he would take some time like off after that. Like it was so crazy to me that he just jumped immediately into like he's like, yeah, I'm just continuing as a pro like the whole time. Like his drive is still there to some degree. He still wants to be a pro because I assume he has fucking money at this point.
Don't world players continue to make royalties on their skin?
on their skin, yes. Yeah.
So they continue to make. I mean, I don't know what he ends up getting, but okay. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a drive, whereas it's fear. So, like I think that's a really dark side of it. But like, didn't Crown have like a Worlds video about like depression and isn't it like?
Yeah.
So he all right. So I have dysthymia. Like I've been on Healthy Gamer, whatever, Dr. K. I've talked all about my story and whatnot. And one of my main motivators is actually just fear and anxiety. So most of the shit that juices me is fear. And so maybe if Crown just sees like, oh, fuck, like, I'm kicked out of LCS, what can I possibly fucking do? Maybe him joining challengers and stuff isn't fueled by passion and determination. It might just be like fucking doomsday. You know what I mean? Like survival instinct. Like I have to do something, And sometimes that's the roller coasters on depression. You know what I mean? It's like it brings you to the darkest fucking place, and you're like, no, I'm suffocating. I got to get out. And then you have that burst, and then it happens again.
Right, I'll give you I'll tell you like a perspective on this that I agree. So it's also going to get a little bit dark, but I hope in doing so it might actually enlighten people as to the difference in culture. I'm not even just giving an example. I know players who've played in the LCS and they've been on, say, the 6th or the 7th best team, but they were grinding in Challenger or they were just an okay pro and they were never going to win LCS. Forget even going to Worlds. That was almost never on the table. Maybe they had the odd chance where, in week 6 we had a good enough record, we thought we could do it, and then they never did. Right? Those players, some of them just have a cool life. You meet them and they're just chill guys that, they play League of Legends all day and then they do their scrims and then they work on solo queue and they'd like to get better, but they haven't gotten that much better. And then they play Smash Brother with their fucking girlfriend and they go for some food and they watch some anime bullshit and then they go to sleep and they wake up the next day and life's all right generally. And you know what? As soon as their LCS pro career ends, they're just going to go back and it's almost like they're going to re-enter the real world and they're just going to go to university or they're just going to get a job or maybe they'll get a job in the gaming industry, right? If you're Korean, that whole thing that is brilliant about Korea, that sense of duty and the idea that you have to accomplish the most and you have to be an A-star student and to be a B student, if you could have been an A student, is an utter failure and you've actually disgraced your heritage and that whole thing, as much as that's brilliant when it makes you the best player ever and you put in all this dedication, it's what will destroy your life through self-esteem and confidence in your relationships when you don't have that. And so as a result, the sad thing is that's one of the reasons I think why LS highlighted this player hybrid who's on a bad team, because I tell you what, players like that aren't thinking what we're thinking, like, wow, you're fucking sick, but your teammate's kind of shit. They really in their mind are so fucked, they'll think they're failing as well. They'll think like, well, I'm doing really great, but what could I do more to win the game? It's like, dude, you're doing everything. I say, no, like I should be winning though. Like I believe in my teammates. Like, so the problem is I actually feel like unlike certain other regions, like how good you are at the game and specifically your results in the game seem to be tied to like the personal self-esteem and the perception of themselves way more with Koreans than it does in the West. Because like I say, with grades and school and society, that's already like implicit within how they do things. So there isn't really the chill guy in Korea. It doesn't really exist. I think you'd even probably be kicked off teams if you showed that attitude. You're supposed to be all in.
Yep. Yeah, I have similar experiences playing with Korean players. It's like
there's no Kiwi kid in fucking Korea who's like, oh, I'm losing, but I'm a fucking brilliant guy. This is hilarious. Let's get pizza. It's like that doesn't exist,
Yeah. Or if it does exist, it's frowned upon. The teammates quickly rally against them.
Whereas in fucking in LCS, they'd be carrying that Kiwi kid motherfucker on their shoulder.
Yeah, holy shit.
Doing keg stands. Fucking, you'd be loving that guy, of course.
Oh, man. Nah, that's one thing that I think kind of like breaks a lot of I think that's one of the reasons why some Korean players, when they come to NA, end up having such a rough time, is when they see like players on their team, like even if one player is not putting in their all, it like deeply offends them. It's like
it's when they've got a teammate who's like hard stuck in diamond on NA, and they're like, holy shit, like this, my entire future's tied with this guy. Like what? and then they're just done. They're not going to improve. Because by the way, the reason I was going to say as well, how you can see this. Oh, the second element as well is, unfortunately, if you go all in on esports in the way that people like Crown have in Korea, you don't have that like very easy transition out. In League of Legends in the West, you can basically treat it like it was a sabbatical. Like you did university and you just took a year off, and you're going to go back or you're going to get a job. You go so all in Korea that realistically, until literally every avenue is exhausted, you're not going to try and go back to the real world because you've been out of that system so much. It's going to be insanely hard to get back in. So as a result, you'll play forever on a shit team. You'll be a sub on a team. You'll go to China and play an LDL, not even the LPL. You'll go and play an LDL if they offer you the money. I mean, LS knows this. In StarCraft 2 to this day, there are top Korean players, like some of the best players of all time, still grinding and playing for incredibly small salaries on like European teams that I've never heard of. Like orgs that are like, you know, like the 78th biggest org in Europe or so, just for like $900 because they don't think they have anything else in life except StarCraft. So they're still trying to just be the best at StarCraft, even when the game's, 10 years past its prime.
So StarCraft's really interesting though, because the tournaments still have insane money. I don't know why. And now there's the Chinese leagues that are starting up. There's like Chinese team leagues because in China everything lives 50 years longer. Apparently, they still have like fucking.
They have Warcraft 3, yeah.
They have Warcraft 2 tournaments probably in China. Like,
hey, Warcraft 3.
I don't know.
That's like one of the best games of all time. Let's just put that out there. If that game had the fucking like ecosystem, the esports ecosystem now
in China,
yeah,
it does in China. It's fucking insane.
But I mean, I'm talking about like Western ecosystem. Like I feel like that game had so much value as an esport, personally.
Well, Warcraft 3 Refunded happened, so
yeah, Refunded.
Well, it did have a lot of potential in the West Dom, but it doesn't exist anymore. It was literally deleted from everyone's computer by the breaker of the game.
Yeah,
that has to be the stupidest move I've ever heard of all time.
No,
it's like not only did we make a new game you don't like, but surprise, we deleted the old game. Like what?
I guess one of the questions I'd have based on what you're saying before was how much of this do you think like the mandatory military whatever
that puts pressure on you as well, of course.
The mandatory military requirement, like how much pressure does that put on the players to like want to like really make this shit work? Because essentially, like I think the way I understand it is like you have up until you're 28 to do it.
You just keep deferring it while you're a pro, basically. Usually,
but the second that you're like done with being a pro, you just fucking go.
The really scary thing is, so I up until like a couple or like 2 months ago or something, I had like 4 Korean players living with me, right? And some of them, their ages range from 19 to 23, right? And one of them, or well, not one, 2 of them actually got contacted by like teams because they're high up on the ladder, the challenger. And the teams would message them and then ask them their age. And so basically, if in Korea, if you were 19, you're doomed. If you're 19 or older, you just can't fucking be a pro. They just won't even take you. Academy team's not interested. Staff's not interested. And this creates a huge fucking mental stressor on players. One of the best Korean players that I know that's like, well, he was a free agent. He quit. He went to military. He had just turned 20 and he was convinced, like, I'm too old. I can't do it. I can't play. 1,000 LP challenger, 3 seasons in a row, whatever. Like, fucking insanity. Just, I don't even know.
By the way, to give you a very quick contrast, in CSGO, we have actually had some really weird outliers who became pros at 26.
No, it's
just to contrast how crazy that is.
It's the weirdest thing in the world. I wanted to get into an argument with one of the coaches when I was like reading the conversation. Like, who the fuck are you? Like, what the fuck do you even know? Like, I don't know. I was getting so angry. There were so many because there's a lot of academies in Korea. NA and EU doesn't have this. There's basically training facilities where players will live on site if they pay extra fee, or they will commute there during the day and stay there, and they'll practice with like challenger players or former pro players and whatnot that have like become coaches and whatnot. And there are these mini dormitories for like trying to get good. And you just hit a certain age bracket and it's fucking out the door with you. Weirdest thing ever.
Do you think, by the way, LS once told a story on one of my shows as well, where, who was the player that we're talking about here? Let me think a second. I think it was a top laner. Who was the really good top laner at LS, where just because he had like acne, they wouldn't fucking pick him up to a team and he turned out to be actually insanely good? Do you remember the player I'm talking about? I think it was a top laner.
In StarCraft? Right?
No, in League of Legends. Like it's someone who was on the top team the last couple of years, and you said like they just didn't even pick him up just because he had acne or something. Is a Korean player.
I know who it is, but no, this is a real thing. I don't think I would want to say it.
Oh, okay, but let's just say it was a real thing though. Like, he was a top pro, and the question was, why wasn't he picked up by other teams? This is why.
Wait, so not only do you have to be good, you have to be handsome in Korea too?
Insane. Or you have to at least have access to clear cell technology.
Your looks are factored in. Yeah, your looks are factored in. This was actually a thing with this was the thing in StarCraft too. Remember Jelizerg? Thorin knows all about this.
Yeah.
Jelizerg was not marketable, and he was told that he wasn't marketable.
He was just a fat guy, basically, unfortunately. He was sick of the game though.
So one of the ways that he tried to be marketable was he would always keep dyeing his hair different colors.
Yes.
That was his like approach to try to fight back against like the refusal to market him, because this player was insane. I think he's one of the only golden mouse winners.
Yes.
So he's basically one of the only people that won LCK 3 times.
He'd probably be a top 10 player of all time, put it that way. So the idea anyone wouldn't want this guy.
Could not be marketed. Or
this seems like absolute insanity to me. Like, this seems like just...
That's what happens when you have a superficial culture. I mean, listen, America has its own superficial, but it's just in a different way, you know. Like, you're not overtly allowed to be like, PS, fuck all fans.
I mean, we've had, like... I'm not going to, like, go into depth, but there's been players in, like, NA where it, like, has to be, like, next level, like there's, like, next level hygiene problems, and it's still just like, yeah,
dude,
well, we're just trying to talk about...
Is Dom, who from Dignitas 2012, a team that looked like they're all fucking about to put on Juggalo makeup, or just came out of a fucking...
That was not the team. That was not the team.
Y'all were wearing, like, hoodies the whole time, unwashed, raggedy-ass hair, like, fucking... Cutie Pie looks like he's, like, in a chain of evolution, mate. What the fuck is this shit? Like the idea, this is one of the most popular teams as well. Give me a break, like...
I mean, I just don't even...
You look like an emo kid at the time. You have the dark circles around your eyes. Like,
I still have dark circles around my fucking eyes. I don't even give a fuck about that, though.
You can't tell me what to do in this game. Like,
yeah, I just can't imagine, like, that being part of, like...
No, it's wild, isn't it?
Shouldn't it
Especially
just
when
be...
we're all nerds as well. Come on, we're all fucking playing video games.
Yeah, what the... I don't know. I think it's crazy. I mean... Do you personally think that there's an age, like there is an age, like even though like you think 20 is ridiculous, do you think that there's an age where it's like you should not like go pro anymore? Like it's just not feasible?
Do you mean like as a general concept or in Korea?
I have a general belief, because in all the people that I've ever talked to, and I usually do this whenever I meet like new pros for the first time and I get to know them or something, I'll generally ask the question because it's come up on my stream so many times over the years. I think if you don't hit near pro MMR within like the first 2 years of playing the game, first two and a half, because you don't have to learn all about the previous seasons, right? Mm-hmm. But if you come into the game and you haven't hit that MMR within the first 2 years, 2.5 years, I think something isn't clicking with you to get to that speed. And even if you eventually keep getting good, people are just moving faster than you. I don't think that you'll ever be pro. Mm-hmm. Like you'll just be perma-stuck, incapable of catching up.
But do you think that has anything to do with age? Like, let's say somebody picks up the game at like 25, and then they're just insane at 26.
You think sounds like it's more experience level he's talking about, right?
There are 2 Korean challenger players. One of them is in their 40s, and then one of them is 53, and he streams.
Wait, he's 53 and he streams?
He's 53 and he streams on Africa.
Holy shit.
By the way, how many people just like literally who are watching this who play League of Legends in a ranked and actually try hard like motherfuckers in their ranked just had their heart drop completely at hearing there's some 53-year-old dude who's like challenger in Korea, and then you're out there still trying to learn Pantheon, like, gotta get this promo. Gotta get into Flatbed. That's like when you listen, I can't even lie. When I've told everyone when I play League of Legends, I'm super low ranked. Like I even get that myself. Like in real life, I'm a pretty confident person. But when I read those Reddit threads where it'll be like, did you know this guy with no arms and no legs reached plat? I'm like, fuck me. Like, why am I even playing this game still? Like, this is getting bad now. Like, this guy hasn't got arms and legs. He's
we have like a little prodigy. I don't know. How much do you know about General Sniper, LS? You've heard of him?
So I think he'll go pro if he wants to.
Yeah, so Viper's little brother. Yeah. I know you're gonna have your own perception of Viper, but this is his little brother who was 12 at the time when he had Challenger. He is 13 right now, and he is like top 10 on the ladder. 13, like 1500 LP, like just fucking killing it.
Is his chat just pure cancer? Is he just talking?
No, his chat is actually pretty nice. No, his chat's pretty nice, but it's because of like that. Well, it's because of like viewer count. I think like when you have like 200, 300 like good viewers, like. Yeah, most people are like, dude, you're so good.
No,
like,
I meant
skill build on Aurelia.
Like in the game. Like, listen, I can only imagine if you or me were fucking gods at games at 13 years old, Dom. Like, we'd be fucking
Oh, well, okay. So actually, when I started playing semi-professional Dota, I was 15, and my voice had not dropped yet. So I was like I sounded prepubescent, and everything was like, "Are you an F word? Is that a girl?" Like, it's like why do you sound gay, kid? And I was like, dude, like my voice, like, do you know how puberty fucking works? Like, I'm a late fucking bloomer, man. Like, just wait until I'm 16. Like, shit. Like, yeah. And then at that time, I just had to fucking learn how to shit talk. Why do you think I became so fucking toxic? I got flamed and hard bullied when I got into the Dota scene. Exactly. Are you kidding me? Like, you used to be able to say whatever the fuck you wanted back in those days.
That's Tom's version of that Bane speech about being molded in darkness or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Why do you think I looked like a fucking emo kid when I was 19?
Exactly.
Shit was fucking rough out here. Like, oh man. Yeah, I was unlucky. I was actually unironically a squeaker.
The youngest player that I ever saw, like, so I obviously I know about General Sniper. There was a kid, his ID was Crickets on Korea. He was 12. He was top 50.
Damn.
I don't know what ever happened to him, but I mean, in StarCraft, there's some pretty freak show instances. By Baby, who's now Thai in StarCraft 2, he won Courage Tournament. So if you don't know what Courage Tournament is, it would be like winning Challenger Series, like back when that would exist. He won it at age 8. Or something, right? I believe Thorin. You might have.
I would say maybe 12, maybe 11 or 12, because I know he was a pro player at like 30.
I know Life won BlizzCon at 12, right?
BlizzCon.
Life won BlizzCon at 12. That's StarCraft 2, but I thought Baby.
Not 12. I think Life was like 16, maybe when he won. No, because wait a second, BlizzCon would be StarCraft 2. So I know he won GSL when he was like 15 or 16.
Age 13, he won.
He won BlizzCon at 13. Doesn't seem right.
He won MLG January 2013.
And how old was he then?
Anyway, like, I mean, this is the insane stuff, right? Like, but there are players that are like this. So there was like Maru, I think 14, right? And Code A or something.
Put it this way, Flash himself made the semi-finals of the biggest tournament in Korea when he was 15. I think he just turned 15 at the time.
Yeah, so there's insane stuff.
Can you even imagine that in the West, by the way? A dude just coming along, 15 years old, and in this scenario, that would be like the equivalent of making like semis of fucking LCS as a 15-year-old kid. Like,
yeah.
Bonkers. And it's an individual, and it's a 1v1 game, so even harder in theory.
There were definitely people that were good enough. I mean, I think that's just the unfortunate nature of like
you're not allowed to in League of Legends.
Yeah, you just need to be 17 to play, because there was people that were freaks, and even somebody like Caps, right? When he was 16, he was playing in Turkey.
Done it. Yeah,
like everyone knew he was super good from when he was super young.
I mean, the obvious example, by the way, was all the Chinese players, because famously, let's not get into why, but yeah, they never 15. Used to apply those rules to China. So Uzi I was at Worlds when he was 15. That was season 3 Worlds Finals. He was 15 years. The dude was 15 years old trying to win the World Championship. Meanwhile, we're still doing that thing now where we're like, but he's only played 3 years in LCS Storm. Give him time. He's only 20 now. It's like, it's a different standard. It's kind of like it kind of brings it back to what Ellis was saying, because I kind of have a similar sense for it personally. I'll give you the best way to describe it. Whenever people say, like, okay, yeah, everyone will understand this, right? You know, when people say, oh, you're going to make your point quickly.
Baby finished second in the finals at age 9.
What?
Yeah.
He probably hadn't gotten sure enough. When he got to 11, though, that was when it really sort of kicked into place for him. He was a grizzled veteran.
Yeah, 12's when he got his pro license.
What happens is if you go to one of those Korean tournaments now, right? There's a bunch of like 8-year-old kids, and you're like, excuse me, can you get out the way? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, we're the competitors. And then you look over, there's some kid there, 12 years old. He's got like a fucking lollipop stick in his mouth, grizzled veteran. He goes, you've been around the game as long as me, son. You'll know a fucking thing or two about this. Anyway,
I feel like that would be so weird, because you're talking about SE2, right?
No, it was
StarCraft 2.
StarCraft 1? I mean, still, I feel like that game is such like a difficult mental game when it comes to like being able to like, yeah, you have to manage so many different things at the same time. You have to have great macros and microsense. Like, how can you possibly do it?
That I actually have posted it many times online. Sadly, it's got the same name as an American movie, so it's going to be trickier to find. But it's got a website and you can buy it from. It's called State of Play, and it's a documentary about Korean Brood War from I think it's from like year 2008 or something. And what's amazing about this documentary is they try to show you the ecosystem of StarCraft. So they show you like Jaedong, who at the time is the absolute best player. Then they show you a guy who's like just become a pro player. and he's like a low-level pro player in a team. Then they show you a guy, it might even have been the baby guy. They have a guy like that who's like a low-level guy, who's really young, who's trying to make it as like a practice partner. And then they have the guy who, no joke's like 12, and he's just gone off to the team houses to start the process of doing the trials to see if he can become a pro. And so by following all these people, you get to experience the full like breadth of the scene. So you see what it's like for the guy who's never even made it and no one even knows yet. And he is just a little kid sleeping in bunk beds trying to win these trials to get through. But you also see that if you're J-Dong at the top, like life's still incredibly tense and hard, and you have to grind all the time. And the expectations are insane. Like Korea is a different world in that sense. Like I often give the analogy, this because people will get this reference. Trying to become like the best in a game like StarCraft, not as much in League of Legends, but a bit in League of Legends. It's like the fucking book Ender's Game. That's like it actually feels like you're just shipped off to some fucking boot camp where your whole life's now just about this video game, and you're just in some fucked hierarchy where your teammates are all 15 as well, and you're trying to battle them and get up. It's like it's not like anything like being in the West where you just I'll bring it back to what I was going to say. Whenever people say it, you'll have heard these stories before. There'll be some kid who's in like plat or he's low diamond, and his excuse will be, well, I don't play all day. So sometimes they'll say mad shit like, I might take a year off school and go pro. And I always tell them, you'll never make it, mate. Because here's the thing. The people who actually were going to go pro didn't need a year off. Like when they were fucking around playing 3 hours a day, they would have been like high diamonds.
Yes.
They would have been low.
Yeah, no, that's definitely how it is.
It happens.
You only want to go pro if you're the guy who needs like 5% extra to his game. If you need like 15%, you'll never make it. You'll never make that gap.
Yeah, no, like when I went pro, I was still in college, and I only dropped out when I joined a top level pro team where it was like I literally could not go to school anymore.
Yeah, you weren't gambling as much on that one. Like you actually had a real opportunity.
Yeah, it was to the point where I joined Dignitas, and there was so many tournaments that it was because I was really close to finishing college. I was 6 months away from finishing university, and there was so many tournaments that Dignitas had already qualified for when I joined the team, where it was literally going to be like I was going to fail based on like attendance the rest of my classes. So I just had to do it. Like I completely don't agree with the whole thing of like you need time off to go pro. Like you should be able to be like a top level player while doing whatever like academic activity that you need to.
It's like that's why I'm also just imagining now. I keep going back to that premise before of like how people aren't marketable and how that would like basically like blackball you out of the Korean scene. I'm just imagining them actually ever getting a look at that fucking 2012 Dignitas team where I've already described the other players, but like fucking Crumbs just looked like a fucking sex predator. And then
oh my god,
Scarra just looked like he owned like a chain of Korean barbecues. If you ever see what the dudes who own those always look like, that's just Scarra. Like he's just a happy guy with a chef's hat on who's got the best fucking Bulgogia smile. Like that team was wild. You had the most unmarketable team of all time.
Yeah, no, I mean the thing was just like it was so different in NA because people just cared about like how you were as like personalities. Like it wasn't really as judgmental about like I mean, Cutie became one of the most popular streamers that we've ever had because he was just so fucking funny. He was so funny. I mean, you did an interview with him, like a reflection interview. Best. Yeah, and it was one of your best interviews because he's just such like an inherently like enjoyable person to talk to. So I just think that it's so crazy that it can be that superficial. And I guess the other thing I wanted to reference when we were talking about these team houses is like joining one of those team houses being super young. It's fucked up. Like, at least from what I heard from Phoenix, it's like, if you're the youngest person, you are the fucking bitch of the house. Like, the older players can be like, go get me coffee and lunch from across the street, and then you have to go do it as, like, the 15-year-old. It's like, yeah, you're just younger. Like,
you want to hear something fucked
you are my bitch.
This is really fucked up because it's going to sound so hypocritical. I myself would never put myself in that situation. I would never want to be. But I can't lie. If your only goal is to get really good players who are really good teammates, it's really effective. And the reason I know why is because this is what basically this is a very famous thing that happened in sports back 20, 30 years ago, which is if you're the rookie and you join the team, you get assigned to some of the players and they can just do exactly this. Like in soccer, European soccer, they would literally make you clean their boots after the game. And the reason they do this is like a military angle. It's like they break you down so then you're accepted by the group. You show you're willing to be humble. You know that they're higher. And then you get into the hierarchy. Then you get your rookies the year after and you do the same shit to them. So the problem is on one level, like individual level, I think it's fucked up. I think you shouldn't do it. Like I would never personally do that to someone. But if your only goal was like make like the military angle, just make the kind of soldiers you want, it's effective. I can't lie.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to do it though. It sounds like fucking garbage.
I remember I got in trouble at BBQ because I got into arguments with the management basically saying like that wasn't gonna happen because they so basically like the player, I just wanted the players to only just play the game, right? Like if you're gonna have people there that are supposed to be like other coaches or something or like managers, then do that.
Yeah.
Right? Why would players have to do other players' errands or something? That doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And I know that I got quite a bit of resistance on that.
Just tradition for them, right?
And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, can you read me the English definition of manager, please, one time? Can I hear the fucking words come out of your mouth and then ask me if you think this is in your job description? So that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I always felt like that was so weird because it's like, I don't think that just because you're younger, like, I mean, I guess the point that I didn't understand was when it comes down to like in-game stuff and like how you have to respect your elders in-game. I never really understood like why your opinion couldn't be of more value in certain situations just because you're younger. Like, I feel like that's like a place where it could actually hurt you as a team.
Oh, it's obviously a weakness, yeah. I mean, by the way, that I won't give specific examples, but I would even guess there's probably real cases where it actually made teams worse. Like there was a guy who was the oldest player on the team and had the most status, or maybe he was a great player years back, and they keep playing the way that he wants to play, even though it doesn't make sense in the team. Yeah. I mean, like I would guarantee there's been cases of that happening. Or the youngest player was the best player; they didn't give him.
Are the coaches resources. Always just much older than all the players in Korea?
I would say like 5-10 years, right?
No. There's younger coaches getting picked up now, which I found really, really.
That's kind of crazy, though, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is kind of crazy. I mean, I wanted to make a fucking joke right now. I'm gonna write it in the Discord. I'm not saying that. Okay, I gotta be fucking.
Okay, Thorn will say it for you.
It's probably gonna be a good one. Here we go. Let's see what this is. What is this shit? Holy shit. I was thinking about that one, certainly. I was thinking about that one. That was exactly the player I had in mind, by the way. By the fact that he kept getting in the fucking game. People might listen. We're not going to say who it is, but it's not impossible. You could guess. Put it that way.
Yeah. I was thinking about ways I could reference it, but I think that anytime I'll let Chad get. I mean, I've seen this name.
If you guys are sharp enough, you'll figure it out.
Yep, I've seen this name thrown around.
Holy shit.
Yeah, no, definitely true. Well, I guess we've hit like the pretty much 2-hour mark on the show. So this is normally where we open it up to like to ULS. Like, is there anything that we like haven't discussed? Any topics that have been interesting to you? Anything that you wanted to get out there on a show like this that we just like have missed? Or are you just like happy with how it went?
No, yeah, I'm fine with how everything is.
Sounds good. Well, yeah, I guess that'll be the end of the episode here. This is like, I guess, one of the longer ones, but it seemed like a good episode. After we started, there was a Twitch error, so we were down to 0 viewers, but we were able to pick it back up. I knew that the show was dying, but like, god damn, like 0 viewers, like what the fuck? So it's good that we were able to, end it on 8K. So yeah, definitely a good show. I enjoyed it. This wasn't as closely like into every league, and obviously when we have players, we try to focus more on their own teams and their careers. This is kind of like League of Legends as a whole. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this angle.
Back for a future one and do a specific thing on the league. Yeah, do that thing where they all go 80 levels.
Well, I mean, I think that in general, LS and I have I think that if you don't have Fnatic being the favorite going into LEC finals, and you don't have C9 being the favorite going into like LCS finals, like I don't know, like the
it's not
topic
argument for me on that, man.
Yeah, exactly. Like those are just the arguments that everyone's going to make. So like we tried to go with topics that were going to be more interesting. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the show, and yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for coming.